It's the live stream, everybody. Welcome to the pre-show for my N10-008 Network Plus study group. It's all Network Plus today. We got questions in this first hour that I'll be giving you from the Network Plus exam objectives. In the second hour, it's open questions in the chat room. Hey, chat room. Speaking of which, hi, everybody. We've got a lot to do today. We've got a lot going on. I've got a lot going on. I don't know about you, but I've got a lot going on. So we have this live stream now. Of course, I've been doing all kinds of stuff behind the scenes with new content. There's new things going on, blah, 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 blah. Lots of activity. I say lots of activity. If you were to see me, it would be me just moving my mouse around the screen and clicking on things. It's not very exciting. Not a great live stream. So I'm glad to not do that for a moment and actually converse with some folks. Hi, everybody. We've got about 9 minutes before we get started, top of the hour. So this is the pre-show. This is where I check recordings, which are going. I've already done the podcast intro. Streaming looks good. You're on the air. Now, all the cameras are good. So it looks like we're just about ready from a production perspective. Part of the problem, though, is it is just horrible weather outside. We are under a tornado watch. It's a watch. There's not actually a tornado, but it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad outside. There's thunder. There's lightning. You might hear one occasionally through this, probably not through the mic setup that I have, but I hear it. So if we lose internet connectivity, which it tends to happen in these particular kind of weather events. So if we lose that, we'll see where it goes, everybody. We'll see what happens. Who knows? Who knows what's going to go on? Hey, chat room. Hey, St. Vincent. Thanks for being here again. We appreciate it. Hello, Houston and Chicago and North Carolina. And Frankfort, Kentucky. I am in Florida. This is Florida. And it's rainy. If you were looking over my shoulder, which you are, you'd be able to see the weather map that I'm bringing up. And see, the weather map is just green and yellow. Lots of this is where I'm in the middle of that picture. So you kind of see where I'm coming from there. This is some bad stuff. Supposedly in Bay County, which is about 2 hours west of me, there was apparently a tornado. So I'm very, very sensitive to the weather. Normally, when it's this bad, this whole thing is shut down. I shut down everything. Everything is unplugged. I have a setup where oh, you're not happy? Not happy looking behind me? Is that a problem? We're in the pre-show. We're not doing anything yet. Don't worry. This is me making sure things are going right here. But there's so much going on. I normally am completely closed when this type of weather comes through. I have a setup where I can unplug 2 power connections and 2 network connections, and everything you see here is isolated from lightning. So that's what that is. That's what is going on with that. Do this. Alex in the chat room. We haven't even gotten technically started yet. Alex coming off the top rope with the $9.99 super chat. Alex says, after the A+ got my first IT job, then just passed my Network Plus, and I'm getting to shadow the network guys at my job. That's the best way to get in, by the way. Couldn't have done it without your videos. Actually, I think you could have done it regardless, but I'm glad that we were part of that journey for you. The best thing you can do, and I've told this over and over, if you want to be in the server team, the data center team, the networking team, the security team, go talk to them and say, hey, you got anything going on where you need an extra pair of arms, where you need somebody to move something, where I can just stand over you and watch what's going on so I can learn something? And almost always they'll figure out a way to make it happen. So I think that's kind of the nice thing. Hello, Lloyd in the chat room from Johannesburg. Thank you for being here. Tyler got his N10-008 course notes delivered yesterday. I'm so glad they got there. I'm always worried that getting something in the mail doesn't quite make it and sometimes it doesn't. I got an email yesterday from somebody who had a single envelope. The bottom of the envelope was torn off, and I had packed in there my entire Security Plus Success Bundle, the physical edition, and the everything had been ripped out of the package. It was empty. It was an empty package, and there were stamps on the package, like in 4 places, that said, package delivered empty, package delivered with no contents. So they ripped it up. Everything fell out somewhere, but they didn't know where it went. So they just shipped literally an empty envelope, an empty padded envelope to this person who bought my. Now, of course, I processed another order. They're going to get everything, but that was the first time I've had everything delivered except what was in the envelope. I just had the envelope delivered, which I thought was great. It wasn't great, but you know what I'm saying. That's just how it worked out. What type of headphones do I have on? My in-ear monitors. If you want to know what any of this stuff is, or most of this stuff, I need to update the page. But most of this stuff can be found on my website under professormesser.com/studio. professormesser.com/studio, or follow the studio equipment link from the homepage of professormesser.com. You have to scroll down to find it. It's in that other miscellaneous section of things. Not getting too bad with the weather right now. Maybe it's a little better. So that's what that is. What I am wearing is these are Shure. I don't know which Shure model it is. So we're gonna have to check my own website to see what model I am using. Put some of this stuff up. This is sort of normal Florida weather in the summer. So that's what that's about. And we're just getting it right now. We're getting it in what is probably the spring. Now, once this goes through, it gets cold. It gets so cold here in Florida. It's going to get down to, we start in 2.5 minutes. What do we get down to? So tomorrow, next day, day after. So we get down into the 50s, 59 on Sunday. How am I going to survive? Should probably wrap those pipes. We got a lot happening. What do I think about someone becoming an IT business specialist with no BA, but experience as a field engineer? Well, you got the experience, so you're pretty good there. Now, I don't know what an IT business specialist technically is. I don't know if that's somebody who's more of a project manager, but that seems reasonable. That seems like a reasonable thing to transition into. Taking N10-008 within the next week. Here we go. Should be good. An analyst, IT business analyst, just as non-informational as an IT business specialist, apparently. I don't know what an analyst does either. That's if you can tell me what that job does, because the IT business analyst has a million different explanations of what that could be. The job description is many and varied. It's sort of like saying, I got an email yesterday, somebody saying, hey, I'm going to be working towards a cybersecurity degree. Do you think this is good? And I explained, I don't know, because there is no such thing as cybersecurity. So what do they mean when they say a cybersecurity degree? And they reply back, goes, just cybersecurity. Nope, doesn't work that way. Cybersecurity is a marketing term we came up to talk about security in every technical aspect, which means you're talking about nothing. Stream has not started. We got less than a minute. Get it going. Josh with the $5 super chat in the pre-show. Passed my SY0501 last summer using my videos in practice. Now working on Network Plus and A+. So glad. Well, technically the stream has started, but the study group has not started. So let's kind of get things ready. I'm going to hit play on my presentation. We're going to bring up Keynote on my iPad. Green light, green light. Yes, we do. And we are recording, and it is about to hit the top of the hour. And that means that we can get this party started. Let's do a study group for N10-008, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2022 Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. This is the 1-hour study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the N10-008 Network Plus exam objectives. And then if you are here live and online, you can participate and answer the questions, and then we see how we did. In the second hour, I'm going to open up the chat room. We'll take questions from the chat room about anything you would like to talk about. We don't have to talk about Network Plus, but we certainly can. Usually we talk about, well, really anything. We get pretty close to describing everything from what's going on in the world to what's going on in my life, but most of the time it's about IT type systems, careers, and other things relating to technology. Thank you for being here. We have so much to go through today. If you are here live, we'd love it if you participated with us. Simply pop open a new browser window and browse to professormesser.com/QA. There's a question waiting for you if you do that. There's also an app that you can get. Of course there is. Go download the Socrative Student app from your favorite app store. And that Socrative Student app will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word. Make sure you spell it right. Professormesser. You do that, and there will be a question waiting for you. That question asks, here it is, a network administrator has just sent a ping to a mail server on the local IP subnet. Which of the following would show the MAC address of the mail server? Would it be ifconfig? Well, that's not the right screen to show you. There it is, ifconfig, dig, ARP, route, or netstat? Now, if you think you know the answer, please do not answer in the chat room. That's our standing rule. No hints in the chat room. Instead, visit this link that's right here on your page, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer on that page. Please don't answer in the chat room. We'll make sure it's sort of a standing rule throughout everything that we're going to do here. We will come back to this question in just a moment. Thanks for being here and checking in with us on this live study group. We'd love it if you were also here live. If you're watching this on the replay, don't forget that you can go to our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll be able to see when the next live event is going to be. When we're not here live, you can, of course, watch what we're doing on YouTube by subscribing to our channel, professormesser.com/YouTube. There's also a weekly Network Plus pop quiz question. You can find those on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter, or find it on Instagram at professormesser.com/Instagram. Technically, I also publish it to LinkedIn. So if you are on LinkedIn, you can find it at professormesser.com/wait for it, LinkedIn. That's right. So a great place to go with any of those. Just type in professormesser.com/ the name of the thing you're looking for, and I think you'll be fine. Let's talk about N10-007, which is not this study group, interestingly enough, but the N10-007 exam will be around until June the 30th. We're here in March of 2022 as we record this. So if you are studying for your N10-007, keep studying. We do have an archive of N10-007 study groups that you can go back on YouTube and watch, years of study groups that you can watch. You may want to do that if you are still studying for your N10-007. This is an exam that's 90 minutes long. You'll get a maximum of 90 questions. There is a score of 720 that you can earn on a scale from 100 to 900. And the exam itself consists of both multiple choice questions and performance-based questions. I'll talk about what those are in a moment. We are in an overlap period, though, where you could either take the N10-007 exam or you can take the N10-008 exam. You get to choose which one you'd like to take. I tend to think that if you have already been studying so far for the N10-007, keep studying, because you have until the end of June to pass that exam. But if you're just getting started on the Network Plus studies, you may want to consider taking the N10-008, because the estimated retirement for that exam is March of 2025, which gives you a lot of time before you ever have to worry about that particular problem and working through all of those. This is one where if you're ever in a situation where you are trying to figure out, do I take a certain exam? Do I wait? the answer almost always is go take the exam, is never wait for a certain exam to come out. Fortunately, both of these exams are available. Both of these exams tend to have a good selection of study materials available. So I would say take the one that you're most comfortable with. At this point, you've got a lot of time to finish up the 007. And of course, the 008 has plenty of materials available. Make sure you get the objectives for the one that you're planning to take. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. Of course, we have N10-007 and N10-008 study materials on our website for both of those network courses. Complete courses available for you to watch. If you would like an offline version of those video courses, you can get it in my Network Plus Success Bundle, which not only includes the videos, it includes audio MP3 format of those videos, a Network Plus Course Notes book, which we'll talk about in a moment, my Exam Hacks ebook, and so much more. Find out more at professormesser.com/netsuccess. Before I go into the rest of this, let me also mention the chat room. Ronnie in the chat room with the $19.99 super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat, Ronnie. Ronnie says, passed the Security Plus, completed the trifecta, so the A Plus, Network Plus, and Security Plus. Thanks to you. Thinking about doing other certs, I'll watch whatever you put out. So, well, we'll have to see. Later this year, maybe we'll have another course so we can add another one into the list. We'll have to see what that turns out to be as we get later on into the year. Stay tuned, as they say, to figure that out. There's not only a video replay of this live stream available immediately afterwards on YouTube, but there's also an audio-only format in podcast format. You can find that at professormesser.com/podcast to be able to listen in and have it automatically downloaded into your favorite podcast listening program. It's also on Spotify. It's also on Google Podcasts. It's probably on the podcasting platform that you already visit. Just search for Professor Messer. If you go out to YouTube and look at the YouTube video description about a day after we're done, you'll notice there are timestamps for everything we do. Those don't happen magically. They're there thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching the replay. Hi, Lori. Everybody, if you want to say hi to Lori, she watches the live chat going by as well during the replay. It's a good chance to tell her, if you use it, things you like to do with the timestamps, how you're able to take advantage of those. We love to hear how you're able to study from these materials. That's another one that's available about a day after we finish. Some good information there. You can go back years with those timestamps. We also have, when we're not here live, a chat that we're usually in on Discord. Join us at professormesser.com/Discord. We'd love to have you there asking questions. There's usually someone there taking the same exam as you, and you can usually talk back and forth about some ideas for studying. If you are planning to take your exam, I'll remind you that there are vouchers available on the Professor Messer website that are already discounted. This is one of the benefits of being on my website, is that you don't have to pay full price for your voucher. Instead, visit professormesser.com/vouchers, and you can get a voucher that has already been discounted. You don't need a discount code. You don't need to search the internet for a code. You don't have to go to one of those really squirrely websites that supposedly has coupon codes but really doesn't. Instead, it's already discounted. Just go to professormesser.com/Discord and you'll be in really good shape. I think that if you're really working through trying to find a discounted voucher, this is a good option for you. And if you purchase the voucher from my site, you not only get the voucher, but you get a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. That is my ebook that has some life hacks, if you will, on how to perhaps get some additional points during your exam. That is the key, of course, when you're sitting in the exam, is how can you maximize your points. Exam Hacks has some interesting hacks that might help you. Let's see if you did well on this question we asked earlier. It was a question that said, a network administrator has just sent a ping to a mail server on the local IP subnet. Which of the following would show the MAC address of the mail server? Would that be ifconfig, dig, ARP, route, or netstat? Let's look at the results and how you have scored this. We can see that 57% of you have said ARP. We have 17% said netstat, 15% said ifconfig, and then we have single digits for dig at 7% and route at 4%. Well, we've already sent a ping to this mail server. It's on our local subnet. So if you wanted to find the MAC address of that same device, it's already stored in your ARP cache. And one way that you can view your ARP cache is by using the ARP-A command and look at your local ARP table, which not only includes the IP address of that device, but very handy, provides you with the MAC address of that device as well. If that IP address is off of your local subnet, then the MAC address is going to be your local router. But in this question, we said that the network administrator sent a ping to a mail server on the local IP subnet, which means the MAC address that we would see with the ARP command is indeed the one that is local on our network. So that works out pretty well to be able to make that happen. Now, these other options in here, NetStack can tell you who's connecting your device or who you're connecting to, but it doesn't necessarily and almost never gives you MAC address information. There's ifconfig, which can show you your MAC address, but it's not going to show you the MAC address of a device on the network. We've also got dig and route in this list. Dig for querying a name server. Name servers don't have MAC addresses in them. And a route command is going to show you an IP routing table. That's not going to show you any MAC addresses. The only option here that will show you the MAC address of the mail server is answer C ARP, and 57% either knew that one or you remembered this question from last month, because this is our single rewind question just to see how well you remember some of that information. Now let's do some new questions, though. That's the point of the study groups, learn something new. The very first question I have in the study group is a performance-based question. And this performance-based question is more of a fill-in-the-blank, if you will. Here is the performance-based question. It asks, what classes are associated with these IP addresses? So I'm looking for you to input the class of these particular IP addresses. So if you think they are all Class E, you would type in E, because there are 5 addresses here. So for those of you listening on the podcast, here are the IP addresses that I would like the classes for. 199.55.27.144. What class is that one? Next one is 224.17.11.2. Third on the list is 87.144.254.16. We've got fourth on the list of 1.1.1.2. That's a real IP address. And lastly, 190.192.224.240. So those are the 5 IP addresses I would like to know the classes for. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We want to instead figure this out on our own. So I'll go through this list again for those of you listening and on the podcast side. The 5 IP addresses are 199.55.27.144. The next one is 224.17.11.2. The next one is 87.144.254.16. The fourth one is 1.1.1.2. And the last one is 190.192.224.240. If you think you know what those answers are, please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's on your screen. Lock in your answer. I see a number of you are putting in those answers right now, kind of figuring out what these happen to be. And I mentioned maybe all of these are Class E. None of these are Class E. Not Class E, Class E. I guess they're not Class E either, as it turns out, because there is none. There are none. The Class E addresses are not represented on this particular question. That's the only hint I'll give you, is you don't have to figure out the class. I think there's no Class E. Well, I don't want to give too much away, but I think that's the case. We'll step through it and see if that's the case in just a moment. I will take you through all of the questions and the answers, and we'll figure it all out. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer of which classes are associated with these IP addresses. And I'll talk to you about classes in just a bit and why you need to know this and why you don't need to know this. That's an odd explanation, isn't it? Yes, it is. Just sort of how we work through this. Let's see how we did with our class of addresses. Well, let's step through them one at a time. Before we do that, though, I want to bring up the chart that's available in my IP, my classful IP subnetting video. So this is an important chart that's here, which shows a list of the classes, including A through E. Notice that E is reserved, and so usually you don't see Class E addresses being used anywhere, but technically they are indeed on the table. The Class A through D, I give you the binary leading bits. If you're someone who likes to convert that first octet into binary, that might help you. I find it easier just to remember the numbers associated with that first octet. I mean, that first number before the dot is what I'm referring to when I say that first octet. So the first octet of this first value is 199. The first octet of the second value is 224. 87, 1, and 190. Those are the important numbers you have to know. And now you simply refer to your chart. So if we look at our first question, which is 199.55.27.144, that 199 is the important number. So let's go look at our chart, and we can see in our chart, the one that has 199 in the range is the Class C, which is a range that starts with 192 through the octet 223. Well, 199 certainly fits into that particular range, so that is a Class C address. Next on the list, 224.17.11.2. If you're somebody who's done a lot of multicast or you've worked with multicast in the past, that 224 should jump right out at you. It's one of the very common first octets of a multicast address. Certainly not the only one. It can be 224 through 239. In this case, it is 224. And indeed, that is a Class D address for multicast. Third on our list, 87.144.254.16. The 87 is the important number, so let's check our chart. 87 fits into this range between 1 and 127, which means it's a Class A address. Fourth on our list, an IP address quite literally I put in because I was tired of saying numbers at this point, 1.1.1.2. There's a little inside baseball for you. 1.1.1.2, if we look at our chart, well, we know the 1 certainly fits into that very first set. We can see that those are there. That is also a Class A address. And then lastly, we have the address 190.192.224.240. And with a 190 as the beginning, we know the 190 fits into this range of 128 to 191, right there near the end of the Class B range, which means that is a Class B address. So there's our answer. The 199.55.27.144 is Class C. 224.17.11.2 is Class D. 87.144.254.16 is Class A. 1.1.1.2 is Class A. And 190.something.something.something is Class B. It's really that first number is the only thing you have to know. So if you do know that first number, I think you're in pretty good shape. That is where you need to focus. That is where the effort is in understanding where these particular values are. This is the real interesting part of this, is knowing where this is. Yes, technically from a binary perspective, if the IP address starts with 0, something, something, something. If it starts with a 0, if the IP address starts with 0, it's Class A, which means anything between 1 and 127 is technically Class A. And indeed, the loopback range falls under that Class A. We don't often think of loopback as having a class, but technically speaking, it does. It's just you never see it on a network because it's a loopback address. But technically speaking, from a binary math perspective, 127 fits into that Class A range. So that is why 1 through 127 is right there. To have that right in the mix of things. Makes sense to me. If you're going to be using these addresses, this is sort of the starting point when you start doing subnetting. You have to understand the class, so then you can start borrowing additional bits later on. We go through that entire process in our series of videos where I show you this from a binary perspective. I show you some shortcuts. One very popular shortcut in the industry is a couple. Well, there's a couple that I will show you. One is one that I do, which is my 7-second subnetting, and I have some other shortcuts on my range of videos as well that might help you. You never know exactly the one that fits for you. So try a couple of different models, different styles of doing the subnetting. But knowing these paths or knowing these classes is the most important thing to start with. A good place to go if you're working through these. So hopefully you got some of those classes right. Question in the chat room talked about what about this if you get one of them right or two of them right or three, but some of them are wrong? Do you get partial credit for questions like this? And the answer is maybe. CompTIA says they do have the ability to provide you with partial credit on the exam, but they don't tell you in which instances that you'll be able to know what that is. So in a question like this, I would think they would offer you partial credit, but you just never know. And indeed, when you get your exam results, they don't tell you. So there's no way to know anyway. Just do the best you can, and hopefully at the end, all the numbers work out for you. Let's shift gears now and move to a multiple choice-based question. This next question on our list asks, a system administrator is configuring a firewall to allow SNMP traps. Which of the following should be allowed in the firewall rules? Should it be UDP 53, TCP 443, UDP 162, TCP 3389, or TCP 5060 and TCP 5061? Another good one that we would have to know. If you think you know the answer, lock in at professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll figure it out. The question again is, a system administrator is configuring a firewall to allow SNMP traps. Which of the following should be allowed in the firewall rules? Should it be UDP 53, TCP 443, UDP 162, TCP 3389, or TCP 5060 and TCP 5061? Pair of them there at the bottom. If you think you know the answer, lock it in. There's your link on the screen right there. Now, if you're watching this on the replay, there's not going to be anything at that link. We're not really doing anything if you're not there live, but you can still, if you are here live, visit that. If you're not here live, just keep track of it. We'll figure out the details. This does come directly from the exam objectives. And if you've looked at the exam objectives for Network Plus, well, you know there are a lot of port numbers. There are quite a few that you have to know. This is one of them. And in fact, all of those port numbers I list there are port numbers you should know. So if you think you know the answer to this one and you've locked in what you think that is, you should also go back and figure out the port numbers for all of these others so that you can lock those in too. This is really the key if you're trying to figure out the details, is not only knowing what you know, but what you don't know. So make sure you know all of those. And if none of those port numbers look familiar to you, or one of them doesn't look familiar to you, make a note of it. Jot it down so that you can go back later and go, now, what was that port number referring to? I need to lock that one in for your exam. Let's see how you did with this one. A system administrator is configuring a firewall to allow SNMP traps. Which of the following should be allowed in the firewall rules? UDP 53, TCP 443, UDP 162, TCP 3389, or the combination of TCP 5060 and TCP 5061. We show the results. 67%, the only double-digit answer, answered C, UDP 162. We have effectively a four-way tie for second place between UDP 53, TCP 443, TCP 3389, and TCP 5060 and TCP 5061. So this is where we get into SNMP, the Simple Network Management Protocol. If you're someone who has worked at all with management of a network or server or these systems, you know that these are very common protocols to use. This Simple Network Management Protocol commonly uses UDP 161 if we are querying a device. These devices can also send us an alarm or an alert. Those alerts are called traps. I don't know why they call them traps. They do. They're just trapping a problem, I guess is what you could say with this. The SNMP traps use a completely different port number, UDP 162. That's what's listening in on your management workstation so that you don't constantly have to be querying these devices. They can proactively send you an alarm or an alert if a particular value is reached or a particular difference in a variable happens to occur. That way we know when some of these things are occurring on our network. So in our case, an SNMP trap, which is what we were looking for, listed right there, UDP 162. Indeed, UDP 162, 66% of you chose that one. That is definitely a majority. We did fine with those. Now, I mentioned these other port numbers are real things. So it would be nice if we could go through the port number list and know what all of these port numbers do. For example, UDP 53, option A there, UDP 53 should jump right out at you. Being UDP, there's not a lot of UDP protocols on the list. This one happens to be used by the Domain Name System, or DNS. TCP 443, another common port number you'll see, especially if you're communicating to the ProfessorMesser.com website, then you are communicating over HTTPS, and it commonly uses TCP 443. If you are on a help desk and you're performing some type of remote desktop with Microsoft's RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, you're probably using TCP 3389. And if you have voice over IP and you're using the Session Initialization Protocol, the SIP, we commonly call it, SIP uses TCP 5060 and TCP 5061 to set up and tear down those voice over IP phone calls. Those are all of the port numbers listed there. The only one we were looking for was the one that is associated with SNMP traps. And if you answered C, UDP 162, 68% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another one. Next on our list is a question that asks, a user has configured a wireless network to communicate directly between two devices without using an access point. Which of the following would best describe this configuration? Would it be SSID, MU-MIMO, ESSID, MAC, or IBSS? A user has configured a wireless network to communicate directly between two devices without using an access point. Which of the following would best describe this configuration? Is it SSID, MU-MIMO, ESSID, MAC, or IBSS? It is a alphabet soup of acronyms in the answers. And again, all of these are real acronyms. All of them mean something. Make sure you not only know the correct answer that we're looking for, make sure you know all of the other answers as well, that you can really know exactly what those happen to be. Even though they're the wrong answer, you need to understand why they happen to be the wrong answer. Let's see how you do with this one. Lock in your answer. It'd be good if I put the link up. There it is. ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer right there. What happened there, everybody? Okay, I made it. Made it back. Lock in your answer. ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Oh, it's a weird day, isn't it? Just got the lightning announcement. There's lightning in our area. There's a storm in our area, but we're still up and running. Now, I have noticed earlier on, and occasionally, I do see a little bit of messages coming back from the YouTube saying, warning, bit rate is a little slow. Warning, stream is healthy. Warning. We'll figure out the details of this. We'll know if we happen to go through these. Let's see how you did with this question. The question asked, a user has configured a wireless network to communicate directly between two devices without using an access point. Which of the following would best describe this configuration? Would it be SSID, MU-MIMO, ESSID, MAC, or IBSS? Let's have a look at the results. 46% of you, not quite a majority, but pretty close, say it's IBSS. We also have 21% that said multi-user MIMO, 19% said ESSID, and then a tie between SSID and MAC at 7% apiece. Well, 47% is a pretty good number to go with. And if you were looking for an independent basic service set, and that is indeed what you were looking for. You want to be able to communicate between two devices like this particular device. It's like an iMac of some kind or single-use device. And then you've got a tablet that's off to the side. Those are simply communicating between each other. There's no access point. There's no logging into an access point or authenticating to an access point. There's no access point. We're just communicating directly between each other. You'll sometimes hear this referred to as ad hoc, which was certainly a term available on the N10-007, but the independent basic service set nomenclature was not included on the N10-007. That is a new topic for the N10-008. So that is one that if you're doing an ad hoc communication, you are effectively doing a connection with an independent basic service set. So this can be done temporarily. Sometimes if you're setting up a device and getting it onto a larger access point network, you can communicate ad hoc or via IBSS initially, and then transition that device into one that may be connected to your local access point. That is what we were looking for. Yes, you'll notice ad hoc was not in the list of names associated with that intentionally, because it's important that you know these particular abbreviations when working through everything you need to know for the N10-008 exam. That means if you answered E, the independent basic service set, then the 48% of you, almost half now, say that's right, you were correct. That is exactly correct. That's what you should be using in this particular case. Now, 20% said multi-user MIMO is the answer here. Multi-user MIMO is a multiple input, multiple output way of extending or making a larger amount of bandwidth available to multiple devices on a network. Very good for bandwidth management, but that does not help you communicate directly between two devices without an access point. That is not the wireless technology we were looking for. ESSID is a much broader extended service set identifier. Whenever you select your wireless network from a pull-down list, and it has Linksys and Netgear and library or wherever you happen to be, that list is a list of ESSIDs. We have an SSID, which is really referring to the MAC address or the physical address of a wireless access point. That is not any method that allows you to communicate over between two devices without an access point. It is simply the makeup of that particular physical device. And then a MAC address is effectively an SSID address. SSID is sort of the wireless version of a MAC address. And then a media access control address commonly refers to the physical address of an Ethernet or some other local area network adapter. In this particular case, the only answer that really makes any sense with two devices communicating directly without using an access point is indeed answer E, the Independent Basic Service Set, or IBSS. If you answered E, you got that one absolutely correct. As you've already seen, there's so much on the Network Plus exam. The N10-008 videos, there are 93 videos. This is not a simple exam to step through with over 14 hours of content in that series of videos. There's a lot there to go through that deals with cabling and routing and IP addresses and independent basic service sets and everything else. Everything is there. I realize not everybody has time to watch all 93 videos. And if you do, that's great. And you can take your own notes. But some people would like a set of notes that are already created that come directly from the exam content. We have those. Those are our N10-008 course notes. Not only are there N10-008 course notes available in digital and physical form, there are also N10-007 course notes as well. So it just depends on which version of the exam you'd like. You have option to choose either one of those on the Professor Messer website. Not only does this have all of the text from every single video, but it also has those important graphics that are in the videos as well. So if you're looking for a description of network topologies, or you would like to get an explanation of MPLS or what an SD-WAN is, we have that prompting there, the graphics, and everything that we create that's a graph and a chart, we try to put into, I think we have put everything into this set of course notes, along with a lot more. Everything that's in the videos. It's a great way to have a summary of all of these videos available on your desktop or in a book that you can carry around. Obviously, this doesn't replace watching the videos. This doesn't replace reading a book. There are no shortcuts. But when you have all of that information in your head and you just want to be able to reference it and get a summary of every bit of it before walking into your exam, this might give you a couple of extra points on that final exam. Find out more at professormesser.com/NPCN Network Plus course notes, or just follow the links on the pull-down menus at the top of the Professor Messer website. Plenty to look through there, and we hope that you enjoyed those course notes and that you're able to use them for your exam. Thanks, as always, for your support. Let's do more questions. I have more here. We'll talk about the next question on the list that asks, a network administrator suspects that a server is configured with a duplex mismatch. Which of the following would confirm this suspicion? Would it be late collisions, no internet access, high CPU temperature, no link light, or out of memory? A network administrator suspects that the server is configured with a duplex mismatch. Which of the following would confirm this suspicion? Would it be late collisions, no internet access, high CPU temperature, no link light, or out of memory? If you think you know the answer, lock it in on that link that's on your page, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll figure it out. Tyler in the chat room asks, he saw the course notes and says, any idea when practice questions are going to come out? For those of you that are familiar with my A+ courses and my Security Plus courses, you know that we have a big practice exams book that comes with that. But there's not a practice exams book for Network Plus. What's going on with that? Well, I just haven't written one yet. I have to write these things, you know. Someone has to sit down with pen and paper and figure out the details. Not technically pen and paper, but you know what I'm saying. But I just haven't written them yet. My plan is, this is my plan, it's not a commit, but it is a plan, that later on this year, I would like to publish some practice, a practice exam book for Network Plus, for the N10-008. Right now, we just don't have one. Don't have one available. There are other options on my website for practice questions. You can find those under the additional study resources pull-down menu there on my website. That's another place to go if you're interested in some additional Q&A. But hopefully later this year, I would like to have one done. I think it would be great. It's just time-consuming. It takes months to write that book. So I have to kind of set aside a block of time where I'm doing nothing but write questions and put them into a book and edit and troubleshoot and get it working and make sure everything is right. And then I can finally publish that for you. I'm looking forward to it as well. Let's have a look at this question that asked, a network administrator suspects that a server is configured with a duplex mismatch. Which of the following would confirm this suspicion? Would it be late collisions, no internet access, high CPU temperature, no link light, or out of memory? So that is one. If we look at the results, we can see that 55% of you say late collisions is what you would see. We have basically a two-way tie for second place. No internet access at 21% and no link light at 22%. And then basically a two-way tie for third between out of memory at 3% and high CPU temperature at 0%. Well, this particular question comes from the Section 3.1 Performance Metrics for interface monitoring. This is something you'll be doing a lot as a network administrator, is not only setting up these switches and routers and everything that you need to get the infrastructure running, but you have to monitor it to make sure that you're able to access all of these devices, that everything is up and running, that there's nothing weird going on. So you're usually monitoring the interface to see, is data going through? Are there any resets? Are there any errors? Are we seeing anything from that device that might indicate some type of problem that we might want to resolve? A good example of that is if you set the speed incorrectly. Let's say you're manually setting speed and it's not an auto negotiation. If you set one in for gigabit speeds and the other in for 100 megabit, those two will never talk to each other. The two different speeds are not compatible with each other. You would effectively not even be able to have a link light between those two devices. But if you have the duplex mismatch, you set one side for full duplex and you set the other side for half duplex, it'll work. In fact, it'll seem like everything's fine. You'll see communication going back and forth. You've got a link light. Everything's working normally the way you would expect until you start trying to send a lot of information down this link and you notice this is not as fast as it should be. We are seeing a slowness. This is not as quick as the normal gigabit connections that I have. So the duplex mismatch can sneak up on you. You can set it all up and think everything's fine. You walk away, and then you get a help desk ticket that says this isn't working right at all. And if you were to look at the interface on the switch, you would find that there are a number of late collisions on that interface. And of course, you know, if you're running full duplex, there aren't any collisions. You don't get collisions if you're at full duplex. So that should be your first clue. Something isn't quite right with the duplex. We're getting collisions, and in this case, late collisions, which are collisions that happen later on in the frame, farther down than it really should, which certainly indicates something is not quite set right with the duplex. It's almost always a duplex mismatch when you see something like that. And indeed, most of you, I think, have run into that, or 55% of you certainly have, because you chose late collisions, answer A, and that is the correct answer, late collisions. Now, as I mentioned, if you got the speed mismatched on both sides, you would have certainly no link light and probably no internet access either because, of course, you're not connected to the network. But a duplex mismatch, as I mentioned, seems like it's working. You have a link light, you have internet access, everything seems to be working well. You just have very bad performance. So it would not be no internet access. It would not be no link light. Those obviously would work fine if there was a duplex mismatch on the system. And then high CPU temperatures and out of memory, those are more of an operating system or hardware CPU type issue. Whether your duplex is set right, whether your speed is set right, effectively has little impact, if any, on the CPU temperature of your system or the amount of memory that is being used on your system. The only answer here that makes any sense when working with a duplex mismatch is that you're starting to see a number of late collisions. And this happens a lot. If you're in an environment, a very large organization, you may be the network person at this large organization, but you may not have access to a server. You may not have the ability to log into a server to look at the network configuration of that server. That's a different team. It's a different group. They intentionally don't give you access to that server. And if you're in charge of the network, you probably shouldn't have access to that server. So you have no way to look at the server config. How else are you going to be able to determine what's going on? You look at the switch config and you look at the statistics. And that's what's going to lead you down the road of saying, wow, I'm seeing a lot of late collisions. Let me give a call over to the server folks and see if this server happens to be set with the wrong duplex. And that would solve that particular problem. But in those cases, you'll probably have to get someone else involved with that. Hopefully that's given you some insight into late collisions and what you can expect to find. And of course, there's a section of the exam that expects you to be able to troubleshoot. And you should, of course, know about those things as well. Shmuel Johnson in the chat room with the $20 super chat. We sure appreciate that super chat, by the way. We've got a message here that says, passed Security Plus 2 weeks ago with much gratitude to Professor Messer and his Success Bundle. Working on Network Plus now. Out of order. I know, he writes. These study groups are gold. I love listening to them. Thank you, Professor. You're more than welcome. Thank you for the super chat. And by the way, you're doing exactly the same order that I did. When I originally did these certifications, I did my Security Plus first, then my Network Plus, and then I got my A+. I did them exactly backwards, but I was working for a security company. So right out of the gate, they wanted me to get Security Plus. And then I ended up going backwards in time, getting Network Plus because it was really in my wheelhouse. I came from a networking background. And then lastly, A+ probably was the hardest one for me because I had not worked with hardware in a long time. I had to get back into it. And in fact, even if you work with hardware, you often don't know the intricacies of why memory works that way and how it's installed and why they have these configurations set up. I learned a lot from A+, even after being in the industry for 10 years at that point and working very closely with the hardware. There were a lot of things that I just didn't know. So A+ was a great third test for me to go through. Yeah, I did it backwards. Congratulations on your Security Plus. Best of luck with Network Plus as well. And thank you also for the $20 super chat. Much appreciated. It helps keep the lights on and keeps this crazy experiment going. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would be more than happy to give you a webinar category CEU in an email, but I need you to do something first so that I know you watched this video. What you'll want to do is go to the Professor Messer website, and there is a Contact Us link at the top or the bottom of professormesser.com. Click on that link. It'll open up a form. In the form, put your name, your email address, and in the subject line, we're going to do everything in the subject line this time. This is a little bit different than what we did last time. In the subject line, put March 2022 Network Plus, and put the super secret code word in the subject line of late collisions. That is our super secret code words in the subject line. Put that all in the subject line, and you can put them in any order. Put March 2022, put Network Plus, and put late collisions. And in the body of the message, put anything you would like. If you would like to simply repeat what's in the subject line, you can do that. If you'd like to put a message in the subject line, you're welcome to do that as well. Send that to me. Click the send at the bottom. In about a week, I can turn these around and send you an email that certifies you must have watched this 1 hour of a webinar category and earn that continuing education unit credit, or a CEU credit. You can do that. Follow those directions. You have to follow those directions for it all to work. We're going to see if we can automate some of this process too. I want to maybe start doing this in the subject line, or find a way that I can start automating some of these to get these back to you very, very quickly. Before we go any farther and do our next question, I got to take the super chat that came through from Mervin in the chat room. A $50 super chat. Mervin coming off the top rope. Thank you, Mervin. That's a very generous super chat. We I'm ungrateful. It seems I'm not grateful enough to say thanks for a $50 super chat. Thanks so much. That is the key to be able to keep a lot of this going, is your support of what we do on our website. You're watching the videos. In some cases, you're buying the course notes, you're buying the practice exams. Hopefully, these are materials that can help you earn that certification. I think it's a win-win when that type of thing happens. And these super chats is just more than I could ask for. Mervin, thank you so much for that $50 super chat. Didn't even put a message, although a chat right after that, Mervin says, passed my Security Plus and my Network Plus. Congratulations. So I think that's the way to do it, is to go through both of those. Thank you so much for that super chat. I appreciate your support. I appreciate all your support. And when you're able to show it through the super chat, it really hits home. So thanks so much for that. Let's go through, by the way, the process of earning that CEU that I described must follow those instructions by going through the Contact Us link. Does not use an email. You cannot send me an email. You must use the Contact Us link to make that happen. That is the way that you would make that all work. In fact, it's the process of doing it that is part of earning the CEU. It means that you must have watched this. You must have heard me say the description of how to do it. See how that works? So I know you must have watched this. Instead of just sharing around a code word with someone else, they would have known. They have to know the process. It's sort of the inside baseball piece of this entire equation. Let's do another question. We got time. I'm just blown away by these super chats. I've lost all my direction. Thank you for doing that to my brain. I appreciate that. This question asked, an attacker is attempting to obtain user credentials by using a list of the most common passwords. Which of the following would best describe this attack? Would it be VLAN hopping, on-path attack, social engineering, dictionary attack, or denial of service? An attacker is attempting to obtain user credentials by using a list of the most common passwords. Which of the following would best describe this attack? Is it VLAN hopping, on-path attack, social engineering, dictionary attack, or denial of service? You think you know the answer? Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. As always, please, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We will figure all of this out online as if we were sitting there on the actual exam. That's the key, of course, is that on the actual exam, you don't have Google. You don't have any of these chat rooms that you could ask people, hey, what'd you get? What do you think it is? Instead, you really do have to go through the process of knowing what you're going to choose for this. That's, I think, sometimes the hardest part is being able to break that down. So if you can break that down, that's what we're looking for. I want to see you figure out what this one happens to be. And again, of course, all of these answers are real attacks. So make sure you not only lock in what you believe the real attack to be, but you know what all of the other attacks do as well. So that's an important consideration when you start stepping through this. Keep your eye on those. Let's see how we did with this question that asked, an attacker is attempting to obtain user credentials by using a list of the most common passwords. Which of the following would best describe this attack? Is it VLAN hopping, on-path attack, social engineering, dictionary attack, or denial of service? 96% of you say it's dictionary attack. Wouldn't it be great if it was not dictionary attack? We could all talk about that 96% of us got it wrong. In fact, I will show you it is indeed dictionary attack. There's no question. When 96% of us say that's what it is, I almost feel like it should be anyway, that it has to be a dictionary attack if you start looking into this. Let's see if that's where we go. The option with a dictionary attack, you know that if somebody needs to find a password, that they will very often go through and just try every possible set of characters that could be used as a password. For example, their first password they might try is AAAAA. Was that the password? No. Let's try another one. AAAAB. Was that the password? No. Let's try another one. AAAAC. Is that the password? No. And they just keep going through this iterative list all the way through until they find one. Well, human beings, we don't think that way when we're setting a password. Human beings think of a name or a word or phrase, and we use that as a password. So my password's pizza. You know, that we think of words that we know. My password is giraffe. It's Ninja1. You know, those are the password, and those are based on actual words. So if we wanted to simplify the process of brute forcing a password, we can simplify this by throwing out passwords that are AAAAA, AAAAB, AAAAC, throughout the brute force that's there. Instead, let's have effectively a much more focused brute force attack, a minimized brute force that really goes after the low-hanging fruit, and that is a dictionary attack. A dictionary attack will start going through words that we get from a dictionary and start using those. And in some cases, the program that does this can even mix a few things up. So instead of using the word password, it will try password, Password, but it might also try P&SSW0RD, because sometimes us humans try to be cute and fit in special characters in replace of actual characters. But the dictionary attack knows that. The code that we use for these dictionary attacks try to take that into account. Usually you have an option that says, hey, do you want to try substituting the leet speak letters to be able to see if it will find those as well? And you can turn that on or off. It, of course, takes longer to go through that, but it's one you might hit on a couple more. It does take quite a bit of time for this to happen. Obviously, you want to be able to find these passwords if you are the attacker, and finding this low-hanging fruit might give you the access you need to these systems without going through every single possible type. So think of a dictionary attack as a much more focused brute force. It is a brute force attack. It's just a specialized brute force attack that only pulls words from the dictionary to be able to do this. So that is the key. For example, if an attacker got a list of passwords from a insurance company, it might be the normal dictionary that they use. But what if they got a bunch of passwords from a hospital? Might be a different dictionary. They might use a dictionary of medical terms as well. Throw those into the mix. So this dictionary can be important. You can download dictionaries like that on the internet that have tons of words in them that are very specialized to a particular segment. Those dictionary attacks, very common for attackers to use to get the first round of passwords done. You can now put those to the side and you can focus on the ones that weren't caught using the dictionary attack for a much broader brute force attack. Dictionary attacks is the right answer. 97% of you got that absolutely correct. Now, what about these other options? Why were those not good options? 2% of you said social engineering. Now, social engineering is a very common way to obtain a password from somebody because you're effectively asking them for their password and they're telling you. Happens all the time. All the time. Unfortunately, it's not a good way to obtain credentials by using a list of the most common passwords. That's not how you obtain a password with social engineering. With social engineering, you just ask for it and they give it to you because that's the way it works. Social engineering, not what we were looking for. 1% said VLAN hopping, which is a way that you can move from your VLAN to a different VLAN or at least communicate to a different VLAN without actually being part of that VLAN. Not a great way to obtain passwords, though. Has nothing to do with passwords. So VLAN hopping, not the response we were looking for. And on-path attack, some of you might be familiar with this attack as a man-in-the-middle attack. We don't use that term anymore, or CompTIA doesn't use that term anymore. CompTIA now uses the term on-path attack. If you see those terms, you can basically substitute them. They are the same thing. On-path attacks are great for getting in the middle of a conversation between two devices, but these don't help you obtain user credentials using a list of the most common passwords. Has nothing to do with passwords. On-path attack has nothing to do with using user credentials and a list of common passwords anyway. Social engineering we talked about, and then denial of service. Denial of service is a way to prevent a device from working, from servicing or providing a service. Obviously, that's not what we're doing when we're trying to obtain user credentials with a list of the most common passwords. The only option here that really makes any sense. Answer D, dictionary attack. 97% of you got that one absolutely right. Very well done. Let's do another question, shall we? Thank you, chat room, for all of these. The chat room, of course, if you have a chance to watch this replay on YouTube, you get to see the live chat replay as well. There's a lot of conversations going on there about dictionary attacks and brute force attacks and how do they work and what do they do and what can you do with it. A lot of good stuff there if you ever want to get into these. I think that is very effective way to see what other people may be thinking along these lines too. Let's do another question. I have another one for you. This question asks, a computer on a 1000 base T link is connecting at 100 megabits per second. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would that be attenuation, incorrect pinout, insufficient light, invalid network driver, or duplex mismatch? A computer on a 1000 base T link is connecting at 100 megabits per second. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be attenuation, incorrect pinout, insufficient light, invalid network driver, or duplex mismatch? If you think you know the answer, lock it in at that link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. That's a great place to go to be able to find the details of what we're looking for. See if you happen to know what this one is. All of those are real things. Again, make sure you're familiar with all of those answers. They all come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, so you do have to know this. And this is a problem, by the way, that I have had in my studio. I don't want to give too much away. We'll tell the story of that once we get to the answer. See if you happen to know what it is. Lock in your answer at the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. What's the QA for? I don't know. I have no idea. Just picked a couple letters, stuck them together. That's where we go to get those answers. If it's not a live stream, that link is not going to be available. It will be available. There's just nothing in it. There'll be no, it's blank. You're just sitting around. But if you're here live, you can actually see things there. We love it when you're here live. Make sure you check the calendar. It's at professormesser.com/calendar. We always let you know when the next event is going to be. And we'll talk later on in this session on when the next live stream will be from us as well. Lock in that answer. See if you know what this one happens to be. Let's see how we do on this. Before we move to that, Brett, we'll talk about that last question because Brett asked, are dictionary attacks practically the same thing as a rainbow table attack? It is not. A rainbow table attack doesn't need to do any type of brute force. A rainbow table attack effectively has already spelled out what every possible password could be in a table. and it just finds it. It doesn't have to do any type of brute force. There's zero brute force on the list for this. So it is not the same as a rainbow table attack. A rainbow table attack, instant password. You want to know what the password is? Seconds later, you know the password. Whereas a dictionary attack and any type of brute force takes a long time, generally, or relatively speaking, a long time. Could take minutes or hours or days to go through the entire list. Rainbow table, instant. You know it because it's already compiled all of these. It already has a list of every possible. It's sort of like doing a brute force first before you even get your hands on the hashes. And then once you've got the hashes, you just search for the one you've already brute forced. It's already in the list. It's sort of a reverse brute force if you want to think of it that way. Not quite the same, but if you think about it that way, that might help. Let's see how we did with this one. The question asked, a computer on a 1000 base T link is connecting at 100 megabits per second. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it attenuation, an incorrect pinout, insufficient light, an invalid network driver, or a duplex mismatch? Let's show the results. 49% of us say it is a duplex mismatch. I think I may have hooked you. I may have gotten you on this one. We'll find out in a moment. 24% of you say it's attenuation, now 25%. 14% said an invalid network driver. 11% just barely making double digits into an incorrect pinout. And 2% said insufficient light. Now, this is one where we are connecting to a gig network. We're plugging in our cable that supports a gig network, because a gig network 1000 base T, that's gigabit Ethernet. So there is a couple of extra steps you have to do in your head, like 1000 base T, what's that? That's a gig link. So we plug in the gig link, we connect our system, and at the bottom of the Windows screen, it says, you're connected at 100 megabits per second. Like, I'm connected to a gig connection. I should be getting 10 times the amount of speed on this link. I haven't even sent any data yet, and I'm already 10 times slower than I expected to be. Why would that happen? Well, almost 100% of the time, this is happening because we have an incorrect pinout. We have wiring that is not going where it should be going. And sometimes this would result in just no connection, where there's just no connectivity because of the pinout is so bad. Sometimes it's just a slight difference to the connectivity. For example, instead of connecting at gigabit speeds, you're connecting at 100 megabit per second as a possible maximum throughput. So that would certainly give you some warning that maybe there are some wires switched. The pinout is incorrect on my patch panel. That is what I'm really trying to do, is get you in the mode of thinking, well, if I have some of these pins switched around, it's not going to be able to communicate at gig speeds, because as you're aware, 1000 base T requires all 8 of those wires to be working for it to operate properly. And as you're probably also aware, 100 base TX, or 100 megabit Ethernet, what we used to call fast Ethernet, only requires 4 wires. So instead of having all 8 wires there, if you happen to flip a couple of those wires, but the 4 wires left are good enough to run 100 megabit Ethernet, it will auto-negotiate to 100 meg. And now we're at 100 megabit to be able to make that work. That's what we're trying to get across here, is that if you are connecting to Ethernet and you're not getting it connecting on a link at gig speeds, and then the link is connecting at 100 megabits per second, then you probably have a wiring issue somewhere and getting that to happen. That is the most likely reason for this particular issue. Now, could it be another answer? It could. For example, 25% of you said attenuation. Attenuation means that the signal that is on the wire is degrading before it reaches the other side. Now, if that happens, you usually don't get any connection at all, or it's able to auto-negotiate at 1 gig, but it's not able to communicate very well. You get a lot of CRC errors, a lot of retransmissions, and probably because the signal is not reaching the side that it's being sent on. But that is not usually what you run into when gig connections are connecting at 100 megabit. It's almost always the cable. It's almost always the wiring inside of the cable The situation I had in my studio was that it was a bad crimp, and not all 8 of those wires were crimped. One of them was not, therefore did not have 8 wires, therefore did not have a gig connection. It will not auto-negotiate unless all 8 of those wires are exactly where they're supposed to be. So it would be, in this case, an incorrect pinout. 12% of you chose B, incorrect pinout. That is the right answer. Now, why wouldn't it be a duplex mismatch? We just talked about this. A few slides ago, we talked about setting up a connection. Everything seems to be working normally, but as soon as you try to transfer data over that link, you're not getting the throughput you would expect. Well, in a case of duplex mismatch, if you have a 1000 base T link with a duplex mismatch where one side is set manually for full duplex, the other side is set manually for half duplex, it's still going to start up at 1000 base T. It's still going to start up at gig speeds. Your link will still be a link speed of 1 gig. It will not show you a link speed of 100 megabit. But in fact, once you start putting data through, you'll start thinking to yourself, is this a 100 meg link? Is this 10 megabits per second? Why is this performing so badly? Let me look. And if you looked at the connection, it would show a 1 gig connection. So duplex mismatch doesn't change your link speed. It only changes the ability of you to send information over that link with any type of performance. So that is the difference between a duplex mismatch and an incorrect pinout as it relates to gig and 100 megabit per second. We've got the other pieces of this. 13% said invalid network driver. Technically, I think an invalid network driver could potentially cause problems with how it is connecting, certainly, but that is such an egregious type of error. It's very unusual to find a network driver that won't connect at the proper speed. It is so rare and so unusual that it really is not even something you should even consider most of the time. So I would not call that the most likely reason for this issue. I would call it the least likely of this. If I change the question, whereas what's the least likely reason? The least likely reason would probably be an invalid network driver. And then an insufficient light, meaning we're not able to get light from one end of the link to the other. Very common to see on a fiber optic connection. This is not a fiber optic connection. How do we know that? Because we're running 1000 base T. That is the standard for 1 gigabit Ethernet over 4 pair of copper twisted pair cable. So that is not a fiber optic connection. There is no light. So don't have to worry about light budgets in this particular problem. So it would not be C, insufficient light either. Of the available options, the one that is the most likely reason for this issue, and the one that you're going to get, I would say almost 100% of the time, is going to be the incorrect pinouts, incorrect cables connecting on your wire. Whether it is in my particular case, I crimped it wrong, and one of these pins was left out of the RJ45 connector on the other end, and so it couldn't connect at 1 gig. I've had other situations where we plugged it in, and someone nicked the cable in the wall during the run, and it cut one of those wires of the twisted pair, but the other 7 wires were there. It might have even nicked 2 of them. It might have got a whole pair and nicked that pair, but it was one of the pairs we don't need for 100 megabit Ethernet. We had still the 4 wires that we needed to have available to make 100 megabit work, and so it would come up at 100 meg. So we had to run a whole new cable in that case. In my studio, I just needed to recrimp, cut the crimp off, cut the RJ45, put a new RJ45 on. Everything worked great after that. In fact, I think there is a picture in the Network Plus or somewhere that I've gotten one of these courses where I actually have the RJ45 that was giving me problems. And I took a close-up so you could see where it was missing the wire there. So you could see, I think it's in the troubleshooting section. But that was the actual RJ45 from my studio that caused me a problem. And of course, whenever I see anything causing a problem, I take a picture of it these days so I can show you the picture of it as well. That is the right answer. If you are someone trying to figure this out, only 13% of us chose an incorrect pinout, but an incorrect pinout is specifically listed in the CompTIA exam objectives, and you have to understand if we don't have the pins right, what happens? Well, it could be no link, or it could be a greatly diminished link speed. Make sure you're familiar with those as you go through them. It could be the difference in getting these questions right or wrong on the exam, so make sure you're very familiar with those. Well, can you believe we've made it through an hour of Q&A already? There's more coming, so stick around for more of this. I will remind you that everything that we've talked about today comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. This is a wealth of information. It should be the first thing you download if you're in the process of beginning your studies. If you're in the middle of your studies and you haven't downloaded this, stop what you're doing, download the exam objectives. Incredibly important. And obviously, this is a great set of checklists to go through before you schedule your exam. It will tell you if you're ready or not to walk into the exam room, and it's free. You can find a link over to the CompTIA website by visiting professormesser.com/objectives, or simply go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. It will take you over to the exam objectives, and you can download those on the CompTIA website for free. We do one of these Network Plus study groups every month. Our next Network Plus live stream is going to be on April the 13th. That's a Wednesday in April. Next week, we don't have it on this schedule, but we're still in March. Next week in March at this time, Wednesday, a week from now, is our Security Plus study group. Come on back for that one. And then on March 5th and 7th is our A Plus study groups, April 5th and 7th, our A Plus study groups. And April 20th is our Security Plus study group. Always something going on. If you want to know what's going on, check the calendar, professormesser.com/calendar or professormesser.com/events. You'll figure out when our next live stream is going to be. Well, we've done an hour of Q&A, but that's okay. We got more questions. This time, you're going to ask me the questions. We call this our after show. Stick around for the after show. I love answering questions that are coming from the chat room. Of course, we have our Network Plus Success Bundle, where you can get offline videos, MP3 audio, my course notes, and so much more. You can download them immediately, or I will send you, I don't have the physical Success Bundle here, but I can send you the physical flash drive with the Success Bundle. Go to professormesser.com/netsuccess. Don't forget about the discounted vouchers. Never pay full price for your vouchers. Instead of going to the Pearson VUE website or the CompTIA website to buy your vouchers, buy them on the Professor Messer website. They're already discounted. professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, if you like this study group, this is something you enjoyed, as you're watching this, there is a thumbs up right there in the video player. We would love it if you gave us a thumbs up. And of course, you can always subscribe to our channel. We have new videos coming out all the time. Follow us at professormesser.com/YouTube. And of course, our weekly Network Plus Pop Quiz questions are at professormesser.com/Twitter and professormesser.com/Instagram. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sticking around. Stick around for the after show. I'll take your questions next. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Okay, let's get some things hooked up there. The vouchers, unfortunately, are only valid in the U.S. and Canada and some U.S. territories. So sorry. They are not valid anywhere else in the world. They're not valid in UK at the moment. I'm still trying to find an easy, good way to make that happen. The problem is that I have to sell them to you. I don't have to, but ideally, I would sell them to you in pounds. And then I have to do something with these pounds. That's the problem. And it's either a conversion I can do behind the scenes automatically. You know, somebody's always taking a percentage off the top of all of these, obviously. That's how credit card works, is that the credit card companies, they kind of take their VIG right off the top and give you the rest. And when you have a foreign currency, they take a bigger VIG. They take a bigger chunk of that percentage. And then I have to figure out how to make all of that work properly from a taxing perspective, which is not difficult, but it's not trivial. So I'm working through it though. I'm trying to figure out the best way to make that happen. It's just not something I can easily turn on and make it happen, just so you're aware of the after show. Well, this is the after show, by the way. This is the point where I will take questions from the chat room. I guess I need to bring up my lower third while I'm sitting here talking. I could have been doing that, so you will know where to go to ask the questions. If you're on YouTube watching this right now, it's the chat in YouTube. That's the one I'm looking at. And then I've got also, if you are on my website watching this on the embedded stream, which is at professormesser.com/live, you'll notice there's a chat room there as well. It's the same chat room. I just embedded the YouTube chat on that page. So you can't miss. You can't not have the right chat. You're in the right place. If you see a chat room and you see everybody talking in the chat room, you're in the right place. The only place I don't keep it in the right place is when I am really working through the Discord piece. I don't watch Discord during the live stream. So Discord is after. Once we're done with the live stream, we'll do a Discord. That might be a good place to do some chatting eventually. I just find it so easy. The integration of the YouTube is nice. Plus, you get to watch the replay afterwards. So that's why I do that. That is the big reason that I'm using YouTube to be able to do those. So let's see other questions in the chat room. Yes, and folks in the chat room are giving me suggestions, and here's some things you can use for currency issues, and here's what about other countries? And yes, I gotcha. I hear you. And that's really the problem, is scale. When you start getting into internationalizing some of this, is how do I scale it out so that I can cover all of these other countries that all have different currencies and have it all effectively come back to one central place for me. I want to make it easy for you, but I also need to make it something I can easily reconcile on my side. It's all finances and taxes. Like anything else, taxes and finances always gets in the way. What? You want money to be able to do this? That's crazy. So that's sort of the way any business works, isn't it? Is you have to kind of play that balancing act between these to make that happen. Another question in the chat room from Ace of Hearts. Should I get a formal education, or are certs by themselves sufficient? It's a combination of both. It's really a combination of four things. You'll find in the YouTube video description, I have a link to a video I made, which is how to get a job in IT with no experience. That video talks about four different elements. It is formal education, because employers still would like you to have a formal education. It is a set of industry certifications, because employers would also like you to have industry certifications. Notice I said also. This is not something you can swap these out for. Well, I'm not going to do a formal education. I'll just do certs. Well, I'm not going to do certs. I'm going to do formal education. They want both. Employers would really like you to see both. And if you start reading through some of job postings that are out there, you'll see they ask for both of those things. So it's not one or the other. It is both of those. You need both. For the best possible chance of getting that job, you'll want to have both. I said there were four elements. The third one is having some type of I don't want to say experience, some practical experience. Maybe you have a home lab. Maybe you've done some work for someone else at some time working with systems. That's some practical experience. And then lastly, the fourth element, knowing someone who works there. Can't dismiss it. It is very strong. If you know someone who works there, they don't even have to work in IT. They just work, or you have a connection with somebody who works in that organization, helps you quite a bit when you are trying to get that job. You know, having that personal connection can get you the job when nothing else may be able to do that, especially if it's competitive. That might give you the edge. So those are the four things. It's never any one thing. It's probably a combination of those four. Most people have, many people, when they're putting in resumes for this, may only have three of these. Maybe you don't have any type of practical experience yet. Well, then you need to really heavily promote those other three things. That's the real key in figuring out the details. And don't think that you have to have a formal education in something dealing with technology. I have a formal education. I have a 4-year degree from Florida State University in business management. It's not a technical degree. Well, when I went to school, we barely had computers, quite honestly. And at that point, if you were getting a computer-related degree, you were getting a computer science degree. And as I've mentioned many times in these live streams, computer science is not IT. Those are two different parts of technology that really don't overlap. And although universities are very good at teaching you the computer science side of things, they are, up to this date, generally speaking, have not been very good at teaching you the IT side of things, because they don't. universities, if you talk to them, they feel like they should not be training you, that instead they should be educating you. So they don't tend to do training classes. They feel, I think, in some ways that it's beneath them. I don't know why, because I can certainly do very well for a career in IT, both from a personal enjoyment and financially. So I'm not sure why they aren't doing more. Now, some universities are figuring it out, and they're realizing, oh, wait, there is a group of employers who would love to have people trained in Microsoft technologies, cloud-based technologies, Linux, networking, security, databases, website. You just keep going. All of those. But that's as you find more. I think the community colleges may be doing a better job of this than the normal four-year universities. So that's why I tell people, don't think that you need just one of those things. You need more of them. But don't think that you need a technical degree either. The degree needs to be a good one. It needs to be from a reputable university. It needs to at least maybe have some type of complexity associated with it. I didn't run into, in my IT career, I did not run into a lot of music majors who are working in IT. I ran into a lot of engineering majors, business majors, economics. Sometimes there would be a liberal arts degree thrown in there of, English or history or something of that sort, because those are difficult. Those are difficult to earn as well, but employers would like you to have some type of degree ultimately, and they can train you for the rest, especially if you have other experience in IT that you can stack on top of that. So if you have an English degree, but you have worked with other organizations and doing things technically with them, well, that sort of blends together and you're good both ways. So that's what I would probably recommend. If you were worried that, oh, do I need to go back to college? Probably not. Just emphasize the things you've done since college that deal directly with technology. It's sort of a comment to how poorly universities have taken on the role of IT, is that employers are fine with you not having an IT degree because there aren't very many of them. So they're fine, employers are fine taking your business degree as long as they have sort of a layer and icing of IT and technology on top of that. So is it bad that universities are not teaching these very important IT skills? Yes, it is. Is it actually helping us get an entry-level job because universities aren't teaching this? It sort of is. It's sort of in a roundabout way, sort of helping us out to get that entry-level position. And if you are someone who is relatively well-versed in technology and you're a fast learner and you really get into understanding how it works underneath, and you like reading the manuals. There are some of us that really like reading the manuals because you learn a lot about what's happening behind the scenes. You'll do fine with any type of four-year degree. You'll do just fine. Getting a four-year degree, some people have mentioned to me that when you get a four-year degree, it's not necessarily saying that you know everything that you need to be able to be well-versed in the content of that degree. What it really says to a lot of employers is that you're trainable. That's what it says. You went through 4 years of being trained. You've gone through the process of understanding how to get knowledge into your head across a broad range of different classes. That's just IT. That's the same thing as IT. So a very similar scenario. If you've got a degree in business management, you're probably somebody we can stick on the help desk and show you how to reset passwords. I think you'll do fine. And I think you'll be able to easily exceed expectations and move up from there. You will level up very quickly in IT. IT is all about leveling up. IT is one big RPG, except it's real. It's not a game. It's role-playing life where you get in, you learn, you churn through the knowledge, you hit the button, and you level up. And you just keep doing that the rest of your career. And you can keep leveling up as much as you would like. That's one of the great things about IT is there's not a lot of restrictions. You just keep going up and up and up and up and up, and they keep paying you more and more and more and more money every time you do that. And from maybe not everybody needs money, but you get flexibility. You get options as to what jobs you take. You get options as to what benefits you might have available. You get options in your scheduling. It depends on what drives you. I'm driven by money. I'm coin operated, as they say. So I was always looking for a job where I made more money, but it was still doing something I enjoyed. Most of my career was in systems engineering, so I was doing a lot of traveling. I were talking to people, demonstrating new technologies, speaking in front of groups. That's what I really enjoyed doing. And so I just kept doing that, but with different companies and different technologies. But they sort of bleed together. They build on each other. So I can start as a systems engineering and network management, move that into systems engineering and security. So there was a pathway to move through everything and get to the end of this. It works the same for you if you're looking for the job. Questions about the internationalization of different certifications. And there was a conversation about this earlier. We'll also kind of dive back into. But the question is very specific to, in this case, Germany. Eric must be joining us from Germany in the chat room. Are CompTIA certs, are they as dominant in Germany as they are in the United States? The differences in the popularity of a certification is almost entirely based on how employers are looking at these certifications. The thing that really drives the popularity of a certification is how urgent those certs are for the employers, because that's really what focuses us on learning this material. We would not be learning a Network Plus certification if employers weren't looking for Network Plus certified people. We wouldn't be working on A+ if employers weren't looking for A+ certified people for Security Plus. That's how we decide what certifications we take. It should be how we decide which certifications to take. I'll have people say, I just take whatever everybody else is taking. I just find the popular one, I take that one. But here's the problem, and I will talk specifically about your question about Germany in just a second. Let me give you a story just about the United States. If you live in the northeast of the United States, in the D.C. area, you live in Virginia, Maryland, D.C., and most of the jobs up there are focused on the federal government. That's our federal seat. So that's the capital of the United States, and that's where a huge amount of U.S. federal jobs happen to be. In the U.S. federal government, Security Plus is the entry-level cert for Department of Defense type IT positions, and in many ways what non-Department of Defense are taking as well. Everybody's sort of gotten onto the same board of everybody needs to have Security Plus. Well, we're talking about the government. We're talking about keeping information safe. We're talking about a lot of very PII, personally identifiable information. We're talking about sensitive data in many cases. So, of course, we're concerned about security. So if you're in that part of the United States, almost every job posting will say, we want you to have Security Plus. Now, if you go to the other side of the country and you go to Denver and you look at job postings in Denver, I've not looked lately at job postings in Denver, but I can guarantee you, in my mind, that the number of postings in Denver looking for Security Plus are dramatically smaller than what you might find in the DC area. So sometimes even geographically within our own country, the popularity of certifications is very different. So in Germany, it's really up to the way things are in Germany. I've not looked at in Germany job postings lately either. But that is the first thing I recommend. I have in that video I gave you on how to get a job in IT with no experience, I tell you to build a spreadsheet. Get a list of all the jobs in your area, list all of those out, find out what type of formal education they want, list and document all of that, find out what industry certifications they would like, document all of those, and then find out what other skills they would like you to have. Make sure you put those in your list. Once you do that, you've got 10 or 20 or 30 jobs in this spreadsheet. You should be able to skim down that column and see what's everybody looking for. Are they looking for Amazon certs, CompTIA certs, Microsoft certs, Cisco certifications? They could be asking for a lot of different things depending on the geography. So wherever you are, whether it's Germany, whether it's South Africa, whether it's Australia, whether it's DC, whether it's Denver, have a look at the job postings and see what they're asking for. If everyone is asking for Security Plus, that's the one you should go get. If nobody's asking for a certification, maybe you don't get a certification. This is where, especially entry level, this is where you really want to very closely match what the employer wants. Generally, if they're not asking for a cert, they're probably paying you less because they're not asking for someone who is, I don't want to say well educated, but well certified in these things that you're doing. They want to get you in less expensively onto the payroll, and then maybe you learn as you go. Not a bad trade-off, really. You get some practical industry experience, and then you can level up either within the same organization. Often leveling up in IT means you go somewhere else. So usually you're doing sort of a 3-year round, a 3-year set in an organization. We often see people with the 3-year rule, where they're in a place for 3 years, then they go to the next place, then they go to the next place, then they go to the next place. So that's the difference for figuring out, how do I even approach what to do first? That's what you do, is you go through the list of what do people want you to have, and then you match that. You should be matching expectations always when you start looking at these job postings. It's a great way to step through and make sure that you've got the right job postings as well. You're looking at the right postings, and you're putting your resume into the right postings. And I'll also tell you that when you make this spreadsheet and you've never been in a job in IT, it looks like they're asking for a bunch of information that you could never possibly have. That they're asking for things that are well outside the scope of what entry level might be. And I'll tell you, sometimes that's absolutely true. Sometimes employers, they're really asking for everything. Their eyes are clouded by this need for having very smart people and hiring the best folks. And they create these job postings that they're really trying to filter out the people that just don't make sense in that role. But what they end up doing is excluding people that really do make sense for that role. So one of the best things I can tell you is that if you're reading a job posting and you're thinking, this is really the right job for me, I fit the requirements for this job, except they want maybe a certain type of formal education. They want a certain 4-year degree, or maybe they want a certain amount of years of experience on the job. And a lot of people will just immediately cross that off their list and go, well, they want things I don't have. I guess I won't send in a resume. That's a huge mistake. Always send in a resume. If you really think that job is one you can do, you really think that job fits your skills, send the resume in. What are you doing? You should not be the one to automatically exclude you from a job. Trust me, the people taking your resume, they're more than happy to tell you no. They're very good at rejecting people. Let them do the rejection. Let them tell you you're not good for it. What you'll find a lot of times is they're like, let's have a phone call. Let's see how you do with this. And maybe you've got some skills in your home lab. I talk in that same video about what you should set up in a home lab, what stories you should have about your home lab when you sit down in the interview. You want to have stories. You want to plug in a firewall, a switch, a router. Do some work in setting up a sample network in a packet tracer. Cisco has a free tool called Packet Tracer where you can build an entire virtual network of switches, routers, and other things. Build it out and talk about the stories you ran into. Talk about the things you ran into when building this network out and the problems you ran into and the faults on the network and the issues. That's a 15-minute conversation about what you did, how you did it, how you set it up. Maybe you set up an entire network to emulate a particular organization or one that you may have worked on before. That's the way you do it. And so people in the chat room are saying, well, how do you take a home lab and put that on a resume? Well, here's how I would do it. Let's say that you were entry level, you wanted a job on a help desk. They mention, like all help desk jobs, you need a knowledge of Active Directory, some practical experience working with Windows, and that's the job you would want. So there's a whole set of things. Okay, Active Directory, I need to run Active Directory in my home lab. You build a virtual machine, so load up something like VirtualBox, load up maybe VMware's virtualization software. If you're running Mac OS and Linux, there's other VM software available that you can get. Load up some virtual machines. And I just did this because I just did the newest A+ course. I built a Windows server, which sounds like it's hard. It's like installs in 10 minutes and it's done. It's simple. Load up a Windows server, configure it with Active Directory, which it is most of the time by default. You just turn it on, Active Directory on. Now you've got Active Directory. You give it a domain name. You've got now an Active Directory network. And then I load up another VM with Windows and I connect it to Active Directory. Now I've got an enterprise network. I got a directory server for Active Directory, and I've got a machine connected to this network. And let's see if I can build an account, connect this computer, and then log in with my domain credentials. I guarantee you that although I just described that in about a minute, you will run into problems. There will be a DNS issue. There's always a DNS issue. There will be a DNS issue. There will be the story of you installing this into the VM and how you ran into a problem with memory. You had to put more memory in your machine or more storage because it uses a lot of storage. These are the problems you should be talking about in the interview. And then when you set up your Windows machine, which, by the way, you can download an evaluation copy of Windows Server from Microsoft. I think it's a 90-day or 180-day download. It's a ridiculous amount of time. Load that up. You can download a free copy of Windows to use in a lab from modern.ie, modern.ie. I'm going to bring this up on my side. Modern.ie will redirect you to a Microsoft website. This is Microsoft run. So this is not a squirrely third party, like where's he getting these images from? This is a Microsoft site. There you go and see it. Modern.ie will redirect you to developer.microsoft.com-en-us/Microsoft-Edge. Thanks. At least modern.ie works. Go to the Tools pull-down menu, and there's an option for virtual machines. And from there, you can download Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. This is designed for developers who are building out applications in the browsers that run in those operating systems. But it also, the end-user licensing agreement also means you can use it in your lab perfectly free, perfectly reasonable, and perfectly legal to do so. And if you're just wondering about that, the end-user licensing agreement is right there. You're more than welcome to read through it yourself. I already have, so you don't have to. So now I've got free software, free VM software to load up. I can run VirtualBox, load up a server, load up a workstation, connect them together, and now I have an entire set of stories about how I was able to make that happen and how I was able to then reset passwords, set group policy, change different settings inside of the Windows machine, all from the VMs. And if you really wanted to be impressive, you did it on a laptop and you brought the laptop with you. Let me show it to you. You know, here it is. Boom. Let me show you this. And you give them an overview of the things you set up. That's a great interview right there. That is like a key set of skills that you can bring to the table. And now that's got to convince at least one employer that, okay, you've got what it takes to be on our help desk. And then all you need is the foot in the door. That's what you're trying to do, is to get a foot in the door. Yes, you can absolutely create a GPO for that. What are you trying to do? I'll create a GPO for that. Maybe this even brings up other things where they say, all right, well, set a GPO right now for that Windows machine to only allow passwords that are 14 characters. All right, got it. Now you can show them how to do it right there on your own machine. That's how I would do it. I've had some crazy interviews where I have asked things of people and they have done things. They've shown, I've had people pull out 3-ring binders and talk to me about what they saw on my website. You know, those are great interviews. Someone who really took the time to go through making that happen. So all free. You can't go wrong when it's free, right? All those tools are available for you to download and run today. If you've got 16 gig of memory on your system, you're good. You might be able to use 8 to get both of those running because you're only using the bare minimum of Windows Server and the bare minimum of Windows. You could possibly squeeze it into a machine that's got 8 gig of memory. Probably won't run fantastic, but you don't need fantastic performance. You just need it to run. So that's what I would recommend doing for both of those, is to make that happen. So that's why. Now, Lewis in the chat room He says, when I talked about just send your resume in, don't worry about them. Don't worry about rejecting this yourself. Let them reject you. Lewis says, I did exactly that. I got my dream job. So definitely send your resume in. Don't ever worry about that. I think that's going to be pretty important as you work through those. And there might be now in the chat room, Jeffrey, it sounds like you might be in the UK or somewhere else, because you're mentioning apprenticeships. That's something that's very common in the UK, or certainly has been traditionally in the UK, maybe not as much as it used to be. But they would run you through a training program, and the government would get you an apprenticeship in IT, kind of give you that first job on the help desk. And from there, once you proved yourself in the apprenticeship, you were then given other jobs. You had the opportunity to get other jobs in IT. In the United States, we don't have apprenticeships. We have the help desk. It's sort of our version of the apprenticeship, where it's not run by the government, but individual companies will hire you. They initially put you on the help desk. That's really most people, when they get into IT, are starting with an entry-level service position. Many of the times it's help desk. My very first, I guess, real IT job outside the scope of being like a mainframe operator in college was working as a field service technician. So I didn't necessarily start on a help desk, although when I worked as a mainframe operator, that was sort of help desky. But I did field service. So I would start in the morning. They would give me a bunch of equipment and things to do, and I go visit customers all day and install memory, replace a monitor, deliver a printer cable. It was grunt work. It was lowest level type technical work. Did that for 9 months, and then leveled up into an insurance company. And in the insurance company, I was working on the corporate help desk. So that was, I had to move up to help desk. I had to level up to get, that's how low I started. I started way down here so that my first level up was finally to the help desk. So that happens. And it was the right path for me. Technically, I think the first job I ever had was working in agriculture. I worked out in the fields. I was hoeing blueberry fields. They pick me up, stick me in the back of the truck in the morning. We drive for 20 minutes. I get out of the truck, spend all day there with the hoe, back in the truck, back to the house. That was the job. And I highly recommend, if you ever have an opportunity to work in agriculture, you should, because you will very quickly learn the value of an education. You will very quickly learn, I should really try to get a job working in air conditioning. That is what I should do. That was very motivational for me. Up to this point, through my entire life, that has been motivational. I'm never going back to the fields. What do I need to do to keep leveling up? So think the same way. You don't necessarily have to have the bad job, but sometimes the bad jobs will motivate you to keep leveling up and get the good jobs. So sometimes that's how we focus. My leveling up the first time was to a help desk. So I started way low in the field and then leveled up and kept leveling up. I think that's the way to do it. I think that is kind of an important thing if you're working through these challenges of figuring out. For the chat room, did I talk about this earlier? Maybe I didn't. What is the CompTIA CySA Plus? What does it focus on? This is sort of an objective or set of certifications that CompTIA has added in recent years. This is certainly not new, but the cybersecurity analyst, or what they call CySA, CySA Plus, is the cybersecurity analyst certification. CompTIA added a number of security-related certs to their offerings a number of years ago. CySA Plus is one of those. So if you're somebody who sort of wants to take Security Plus and then go to the next level with Security Plus knowledge, you run into CySA Plus. So that is really, so for example, leverage intelligence and threat detection techniques, analyze and interpret data, identify and address vulnerabilities, suggest preventive measures, effectively respond and recover from incidents. So that's kind of the focus of CySA Plus. Quite a lot there to go through. And I think the idea of getting more and more knowledge in security is a good one. My last big gig where I worked for a third-party company, not doing this full-time, but when I worked for someone else, was working for an IT security company. I was working in cybersecurity. So I love the idea of security certifications. Security-related certs, I think, can take you a long way. We also get into this part of security is very broad. So you also tend to get certifications that are very focused. For example, if an organization has a Palo Alto Networks firewall, they also like to see that you have a Palo Alto Networks certification. If it's somebody who has a particular IPS, a certain firewall type, a certain SIM, they also tend to want you to have that manufacturer's training or certification. So sometimes you'll run into that too. But I think having broader certifications around these topics can only be helpful, because once you finish Security Plus, you can talk to a certain level of security. Well, you do CySA Plus, now you talk more about attacks. You want to do Pen Test Plus, you can talk more about finding vulnerabilities and resolving these open doors that we have in our services. It just depends on the certification you're doing. There are certainly options around the industry for that. There was a conversation going on earlier in the chat room about other certifications, and one that came up was the Google IT professional certification. Google, if you aren't aware, they have their own certification as well. The Google IT cert really focuses on a broad scale of different options. It's the Google IT Support Professional Certificate. There it is. And they go through a lot of things. Some of this is very similar to the things you might find in A+. There's a little bit of Network Plus thrown in. There's a little bit of command line here. They kind of take you around a lot of different skills that you need to know. But they really talk about it here. Debugging, encryption algorithms, customer service, network protocols, Linux, DNS. It's all over the place. Cloud computing, the network models, it's all in there. It's a very broad certification as well. A lot of people talk to me about the popularity of this particular certification and how people are doing it. And because it's from Google, you sort of have to look at it and go, well, I think the content that is in this particular certification is quite good. The problem, though, is if you go to your favorite search engine for jobs, go to the Indeed.coms and the Dice.coms and the LinkedIn jobs and all of these sites you would go to see what jobs are available in your area. If you search for CompTIA A+, you'll see tens of thousands of jobs in the United States anyway show up. Just thousands and thousands of job postings are out there that have the words CompTIA A+ in them. If you did the same thing, that search for Google IT Support Professional, and you search for that certification, it's like 100. You get like, there's a very few employers looking for this specific cert. So I guess it depends on what you're trying to do. Are you trying to get a job that has all of these skills associated with it, that you're familiar with Linux and some cloud and some scripting and some networking and some operating system? Then maybe if you're trying to learn those things, you get the Google certificate, even though employers, even if you tell the employer you have it, they're just going to look at you with a blank face like, I don't know what that is. So that doesn't do anything in my world. But you should also think about getting that A+, so that you can say, I've got the A+, I've also got the Google IT support, so I've extended a little bit beyond that. I've done a little Linux, I've done a little cloud, I've done a little this, a little that. So at least you can talk to those pieces. It does not have quite the same appeal. The Google does not have quite the same appeal as some of these more well-established and popular certifications. The difference, however, is if you happen to be interviewing at Google for an IT position, okay, now you probably want to get this cert. That's a very small niche. I grant that. It's a very, very tiny niche, but at least it gives you a perspective of why you would want to get a certain cert. That's really the question you should pose to yourself every time you're looking at a new cert. So if we go over to Microsoft certifications and we're looking at a Microsoft cert for Azure, for Windows Server, for anything relating to their Office or their cloud-based systems, take that same certification, maybe the number or the name, put it into your search engine for jobs, and see how many employers are looking for those credentials. You know, there needs to be some reason you're doing this, right? You need to have something that you're doing that is driving you towards getting that cert. Certifications are difficult things to get. You just can't do it for a week and you got it. These are many months of learning that you usually have to sit down before you're able to really get everything you need to know to take the test. So this is quite an investment of your own personal time. It's quite an investment of money. So you have to be able to make the right decisions at the very beginning. So at the end of it, when you've earned the cert, there's a reason you earn that certification. And sometimes it's your own personal knowledge, but I would say that's rare. That's unusual to have that be the reason you earn that particular cert. Most of the time we're earning a cert so that we can get a job or get a better job. I would say that's 99% of the time what people are doing. There are people that come to my site that say, I'm not going to take the exams. I'm just learning this to learn it. And that's fine too. It's absolutely a reasonable and normal thing to do, especially if you have no reason to have the cert, but you do have a reason to know the content. So that's up to you. Figure out what makes sense for you, and you'll go down that road. Ace Hearts in the chat room asks, have I had any experience in computer science? Well, to some degree. The very first company I started that was a technical company was Messer Haas Software. We kept the German thing going there. It was a software company where I wrote code to be able, in that particular case, it was to manage uptime and downtime of servers. I worked at a company that had like 100 Novell NetWare servers. They were the server of choice prior to Microsoft Server. But Novell NetWare, we had 100 of them located around the world. And I would be the first one into the office, and I would look at the list of servers, and it would say 99 servers. I'd like, 99. We have 100. Where's the 100th? And which one's missing? I'd have to go through the list of 99 to figure out which one is not in this list. Every morning it seemed one was missing. When you have 100 servers, something is going to go wrong somewhere, right? So I started writing some software called the Missing Link. And the Missing Link would constantly monitor those 100 servers. And if any server disappeared from the link, it would move it off to the side and make it red and say, this one suddenly is missing. So that was my very first company, was a computer science company. I just realized very quickly I didn't enjoy writing code. At the time, I had a job in IT, and I was doing the code writing at night on the weekends. It was the side hustle. And I was selling some copies of the code. People liked it. We used it in our own company. I sold it to third-party companies, and it worked great. It's just not something I really enjoyed. So eventually, I got out of that business and thought, let's do something more IT-related. And that's about that time, this thing came into the market. Not sure you even heard of it. It's called the internet. When the internet hit the market and really became popular and really became commercialized, well, of course, that changed everything. That really made it so that the entire market was different for IT type services. And I want to say the rest is history, but I don't think it is quite yet. We're still figuring this out. The internet is still, it's very early, really, in the world of the internet. We're not only still figuring it out from a business opportunity perspective, we're just figuring out the internet at this point. Even today, we're still trying to figure out how this whole thing works and works well. We're starting to even have those questions today of who gets access to the internet, who gets access to data. Is this an open network? Is it not an open network? Is it? And we're adding new technologies all the time. Now we got the cloud. Now we got cryptocurrency. We got all these different technologies, that weren't here 20 years ago, 15 years ago, some 10 years ago. So it's interesting what's going to be next. Where's this going to go? There's going to be an opportunity for you regardless of what that happens to be. That's why I always tell you, if you're right now sort of in wherever you are in your career, whether you're at the beginning, the middle, you're deep into your career, always keep looking at the emerging technologies. One good place to go is every year Gartner, which is an analyst company, their job is to talk to people in the industry to find out what employers are doing, what manufacturers are doing, what developers are building. And they tell you, here's what we see is hot right now. And they are right on the pulse. They really talk to a lot of people, and they're very well respected in the industry. So if you're trying to figure out what are the hot things right now, where should I be focusing my efforts to be ahead of the curve, go look at some of the things Gartner publishes every year at their emerging trends, at their latest and greatest technologies that they're seeing people embrace. And you'll start to see them, many years ago talking about the resurgence of security technologies. And they talked about the cloud. And they talked about all of these things that today are perfectly normal. Well, of course, we expect you to be on the cloud. We expect to have this automation. We expect to have these technologies in place. Well, they had to start somewhere. And if you can get down at the very beginning of the wave, is a great place to be if you're trying to decide what cert do I get next. Do I get a certification in Banyan Vines, or do I get a certification in Microsoft Cloud? Okay, I go with Microsoft Cloud. That's the one that tends to be those. Obviously, that's an easy one. But that's one where you're trying to make a decision about where these trends are going, mainly because not only is this going to give you some perspective into the future, some longevity into the future, the emerging trends tend to pay better. So if you just search for Gartner Emerging Trends, they do have a page that talks about get the Gartner 2022 Trends Report. This happens to be a trends report on hyper automation. Oh, I love you buzzwords, marketing people. The hyper automation. Now we get to hear that constantly. This is from a third-party company, so that's not from Gartner directly. But there's other reports, top trends for decision intelligence. Gartner is a huge company that has a broad scope, and they cut up the different technologies into different columns so that you can break those apart. You can look at just security. You can look at different aspects of operating systems. They're all broken out that way. Top strategic technology trends for 2022. There's plenty here to look at. Now, let's look at this one. This is a good release. This was done October the 18th of 2021. This is from the Gartner website. It's a press release from October. So let's just quickly, the top strategic technology trends for 2022 are generative artificial intelligence. So obviously they're thinking AI is going to take a jump, probably because of all the data we're collecting on this. Data fabrics, that's another good one to look at, especially if you're interested in data and analytics. You may have even noticed CompTIA recently introduced Data Plus. You're starting to see data everywhere. This is why. We're now at a point where we're collecting more data than ever. We're able to examine and analyze more data than ever. Therefore, we need experts that understand how to do all of that data analysis. And we certainly see that with a jump in the data fabric and how we're able to manage all that data. A distributed enterprise, interestingly enough, or not, we are certainly more distributed than ever. When we sent everybody home for weeks at a time, we realized, wow, these people can be working anywhere and very often are. Cloud native platforms, or CNPs, where you've got cloud computing, you do the lift and shift. It is, the cloud is not going anywhere. The cloud is simply becoming more mature. People are finding more and better ways to use these technologies all the time. It's another one to look at. Along the same lines, an autonomic system, something where automation, as you've already seen, is a major part of what we are doing. So that is certainly a trend you should keep your eyes on, not just from a programming perspective, but you're already going to be asked to do tons of automation with Python, with PowerShell, tons of scripting. The more you know how to automate, the more you will be paid in your career. Just bottom line. That is really the key. So make sure you're very familiar with automation, that you can do scripting in PowerShell. The first thing you should think in your mind when somebody wants to do something, can I automate that? Can I make a script out of that? I could probably make a script out of that and do it in 5 minutes rather than 4 hours. I just, for example, did a conversion of like 50 files that I've been working on. I have it in a certain format. I needed to put it in a different format for somebody else to look at. I created a script that would just take everything in the directory, go through every file, convert it, save it somewhere else, and when it got to the end, it stopped. And it did that in 5 minutes. It did the whole conversion process in 5 minutes. That would have taken me 2 hours. So being able to do automation seems like it would take you longer. It really isn't. It's really a very powerful skill. Decision intelligence, DI. Decision intelligence is really more of a key for the management side of things, but there needs to be systems that provide that information so that managers, CEOs, and other executives of organizations can make better decisions about where to take the company. They don't get the data, they can't make the right decision. So decision intelligence becoming incredibly important. All of these lists of things, there's hyperautomation again. All of these things are things you should be looking at. And of course, there are trends and places you can go to learn more about all of these. Are there jobs available right now for cybersecurity mesh, AI engineering, total experience, or TX? Maybe not in your area. These are very emerging technologies. But if you're trying to lean your education in a direction that will eventually give you more opportunity, emerging technologies may be a really good place to go to figure that piece out. If you're someone who's trying to make that happen, that's where I would go. Question in the chat room, are foundational certificates required before jumping into a CEH program? The Certified Ethical Hacker, the much maligned and badly spoken of Certified Ethical Hacker, is one that a lot of people will get this certification. It's another one of those that employers know about, so they tend to ask about it. I've often said publicly in my live streams, I will never offer any CEH content. I don't mean never, I mean never. You will never see me create any CEH content. First, they don't allow me to. That's an important one. They restrict who's able to train on this content. I don't know if that's still true, but I think it is. I don't believe I'm able to create any CEH content. There's a win-win because I don't plan on making any. And secondly, they've just, through the years, not done a very good job at keeping people's information private. So information's been stolen from CEH many times. Well, at least 2 times. I did too many minis there. So there are at least two documented instances I can think of where there was a data breach. And the problem is you're giving CEH your personal information, in some cases a picture of your driver's license, a picture of your passport, and they're keeping this on their servers. And then when their servers get hacked, all of that information is now public to the world. So they've had a very bad example to set on keeping your information private. And for no other reason, I'm out. I just don't want to get involved with an organization that has had such a bad track record. Maybe it's much better now. Maybe they've done a much better job. I'm not going to be the one to figure that out. So if you want to get a perspective, I'll just show you what I mean. I'm going to do a search of CEH, and here's one you may not have expected. CEH and Snowden. So I'm just going to, seems like a weird one to bring up, but I think it makes the point. This is from 2014. This is the ethical hacking organization was hacked, and they stole passports. One of the passports they stole, that's correct, Edward Joseph Snowden. So there's a really good example. That could be you. This could be my picture right there with my passport had I been the one to get a CEH certification. That's why. For really no other reason. If you look through the content that is contained in the CEH certification, I really like the content that they are offering. I think it's a very good choice of content. But I also like, and this is probably a bad example for those that sort of follow me and the things that I do, because I don't want to seem too much of a someone who is just doing CompTIA. But if you wanted an alternative to CEH, a pretty good alternative, you can go with the CySA. You can go with the CASP Plus. There are other security certifications from other organizations that I would recommend over and above, well beyond and above what CEH is offering. So the answer for Alex, who's asking, can you suggest a good alternative to CEH? Anything else is a good alternative to CEH. Anything else. You give me an option, I'll say, oh, that's better. That's much better than CEH. What about this one? Yep, that one's better too. How about this one? That's better. Yeah, I'm completely slanted in my thinking. I am obviously not the one to talk about for CH. I'm just so negative on that particular cert. There's other reasons I'm negative on it, generally speaking. There's other things that I have researched sort of in the backside that we're not going to talk about that lead me outside the scope of CEH, but it's just not one I would ever consider. It's not, do your own research, do your own analysis. Your mileage may vary. I'm just giving you my perspective on that. I rarely go into polarizing type statements like that. You don't hear me saying yes or no, that it's a hard no or a hard yes for anything. I think there are advantages and disadvantages to everything that we can choose. The CEH is one of those cases where I'm completely polarized on it. I'm not coming off of that one. Not going to do it. So, yeah, another good choice in the chat room. Jeff says the CCNA Cyber Ops, do they even offer that anymore? Is that even a thing? When they changed all their CCNA, did they get rid of Cyber Ops? I'm trying to remember. As many of you know, they changed up all the Cisco courses about 2 years ago. And I think they still offer it. The Cisco Certified Cyber Ops Associate is indeed on their website and available. So there are some, and no prerequisites, no formal prerequisites at all. You can just take that one. So another good option. Anything is better than CEH, in my opinion, allegedly. I don't know. I look forward to your lawyers calling me. Hank in the chat room, the $4.99 super chat. Hank says, hi, Prop. Thanks for everything you do. Would you be able to give your opinion, Bradley Summers' question on AZ800, please? I didn't see the question about AZ800. This has to be about Microsoft certs and what people are looking for. AZ800. I can't even search through it. That doesn't help me, does it? AZ800. We'll do a quick search. There we go. Bradley says, do I have any opinion on the new Microsoft Windows Server Hybrid Administrator Associate Certificate? First, it has too many words in it. It's the AZ800 and AZ801. Some say it is a replacement for the defunct MCSA, SAD, and MCSE. Those were the days, right, when Microsoft had one of the strongest certification bases you could really pull from and know what it is. When Microsoft, for those of you that were familiar, about the point when we were all quarantined to our homes where we could really learn to hate our families again, we all were, you'll notice Microsoft kind of shifted around all of their certifications. They were going to make some very drastic changes. They suddenly put them on more of a slow burn, but they eventually changed out everything with their certifications. Mostly what they focused on was removing an emphasis in the operating systems and understanding server and Windows, and they shifted everything to more of a cloud-based focus because Microsoft shifted to more of a cloud-based focus. They want everything in the cloud. And I think if you're doing anything relating to Microsoft, I can't imagine not having a server certification, Windows Server, and I can't imagine not having a Microsoft Windows certification. These are very complex operating systems with very specific design requirements for both of them and ongoing deployment and management and maintenance for those systems that you need something to be able to train you. I have not looked recently at any of the Microsoft certifications. As soon as they sort of threw out the baby and the bathwater and redid everything, I felt that it was probably best to let this settle down a little bit. Maybe we're at that point that now that we're sort of coming out of the cave and the lights outside. And like, oh, we have to go back to work and everything. Now we can sort of have a look at what's left. What have they created from this mess that they built? So now I really do need to go back and do more of an analysis of the Microsoft certs to see what they do. So the quick answer is I have no idea if AZ800 and AZ801 are what employers are really looking for. I think maybe a quick search on your favorite job posting site might help you a little bit. However, if it has to do with the cloud, if it's an AWS cert, the Amazon Web Services, if it is a Azure cert from Microsoft, these are good certs to have. Anything relating to the cloud is a good cert to have. There should be plenty of people who are asking about that. Yes, the hybrid certification is what we're talking about, the AZ800, AZ801. So that may be a good one. That's a good mix for people that are doing cloud. Maybe Microsoft realized we should probably not completely cut things off at the knees. Perhaps there's still a need for people to understand server. Maybe that's what they're doing. I don't know. So I'm not a good person to ask about Microsoft right now. I've been in the middle of rebuilding the latest A+ content for this. And really trying to make that happen in a quick amount of time. So I've been heads down. I've just been ignoring everything else at the moment. And eventually I start shooting video. I kind of come up for air, kind of look around at the industry, because right after I finish A+, I'm going to do something else. I need to build another course. What's that course going to be? Is it going to be Microsoft? Will it be Amazon? Will it be Cisco? Will it be VMware? Will it be Red Hat? I don't know. Could be anything. We don't know. But at that point, I really do have to start looking around. I've just not looked lately. So I don't want to give you a halfway answer on that one. I give you a 0 answer. I just don't have one. But maybe something I can look at for next time. And if we want to go through this again, I'll go do some homework and we'll sort of work through it. If you want to come back next week for the Security Plus study group, that's a good one. For those of you in the chat room wondering, hey, when is the next Security Plus study group? You go to professormesser.com/calendar. Or hit the calendar link at the top of the Professor Messer website, or hit the events link at the top of our Discord channel list. There's also an events list there. You can't go wrong. The events are listed everywhere, so you'll know exactly when that next event is going to be. And when you go to Discord or you go to my website calendar, there is a calendar time conversion built into that. So you can see a time conversion at the top on my website. If you're in Discord, it will automatically show you those pieces. Yes, I'm aware of what the name of the certification is. I just haven't seen it. People trying to explain. It's the Microsoft Server Hybrid. I know, I got it. But I just haven't seen it. I haven't looked at it. I should go look at it. Okay. Paul's now forcing me to do this. Paul, this is about you. Microsoft. Paul is bossing me around, and I'm for it. Administrate. Okay, let's see what we got going on. That's that's third-party site. Thank you, Google Advertising. Let's go. Exam AZ800. There it is. It was coming soon in September. I think it's probably here by now, isn't it? And the chat room's asking about a certification called the A+. We'll be looking at that one next. I don't have any information on that one for you. I'm so sorry. We'll have to step through it, see what the options are. We're going to bring up the Microsoft certification. Paul mentioned it a mere 7 or 8 times in the chat room. So it's really, and it's so good. For those of you wondering, I'm sitting here trying to get the screen to load, and this is either my internet or Microsoft site. It says the stream is healthy. My numbers on my cache, I'm constantly looking at these numbers. For those of you, there's a cache number here of 3%. If that number starts increasing, then there's something wrong with my network. If it starts going up to 7, 10, 20. So there's not a problem. It's just the Microsoft site is not talking to me at all, or my browser is completely hosed, or the normal things. I'm going to blame it on the Microsoft Tech Community website, which is probably not the best choice. AZ800. Let's just search for that, everybody. The new AZ800 and AZ801, where everybody seems to be very bullish on this particular certification. They seem to think it's a good idea. Here we go. There it is, the AZ800. Candidates for this exam administer core Windows Server workloads using on-premises, hybrid, and cloud technologies. So this is effectively the new Windows Server cert. These professionals should have an expertise in implementing and managing on-premises and hybrid solutions such as identity, management, compute, networking, and storage. They use administrative tools and technologies such as Windows Admin Center, PowerShell, Azure Arc, and IaaS Virtual Machine Administration. Candidate for this exam should have extensive experience working with Windows Server operating systems. Well, that sounds like it's not an entry level. Sounds like it's not the beginning of Windows Server. It sounds like we already need to know Windows Server. There is a related 801 exam, which is configuring. They always tend to have two exams. They did with Windows as well. They have a Windows exam, and then they have a configuring Windows exam. Well, it seems like keeping the same thing. They're having sort of a Windows Server hybrid advanced services, and then configuring, how do you make it work? How do you maintain it? Which is a pretty good separation, I think, between those two. Those sound pretty good. Those aren't bad. I haven't looked at the exam objectives. I'm not familiar at all with what's expected there, but it's another example that if you're wondering, is that any good? I don't know. Are employers asking for it? There's the question. So now go to your AZ800, type that into your favorite dice.com type site, and let's see, is it something employers would like you to have? Or is it so new that nobody's really asking about it yet, but they're asking about the skills that are required from something like this? So maybe you front end the skills discussion by saying, oh yeah, I have their latest certificate on that. So that's it. I can easily see the objectives. I don't need you to put all of that in there. I'm good. So that's the real key. You step through it, figure out if that's the right one for you. Maybe it is. I think when you get into a certification that has that cloud aspect, it can only be helpful, but it's really about what employers want you to have. Maybe you do that list and then nobody's asking for any Microsoft certs. So in your particular geography, it's not an important cert. Or you might be in a geography, maybe you're in a large city where Microsoft certifications are very popular. Okay, well, it makes sense to go after that one. There's no yes or no 100% of the time you would do this sort of thing. Everybody has a different path. Everybody has a different set of options available to them. The opportunities in your particular geography are different. It's just very, very different to focus on those. Thoughts on Salesforce certs or other software as a service certs? Haven't even looked at any. Have not even bothered with that. Our world of IT is so much deeper than those. It tends to, the layers are much deeper in the stack that how to use an app isn't quite where we tend to focus our efforts. In fact, the folks in IT are probably not the ones using the Salesforce app. They're probably not the ones using the finance and payroll software as a service applications. You're not the one using the accounting software as a service app for your organization. You're the one maintaining the connectivity for someone to be able to access that app. Maybe you're the one setting up the authentication link so that people can authenticate to the software as a service app through your existing access system, such as Microsoft Active Directory. So you could set up the same authentication to work within your organization, but you're accessing software as a service somewhere else. That's usually the technologies we're working with. The actual using of that particular software, not our concern, not what we do day to day. So those don't tend to be in our list of things we need to know. We're much better knowing how to set up the technology behind the scenes so that people can then use those particular technologies. So that's where I would focus. Salesforce too. Spent a lot of time in Salesforce. So that there's just a little bit of PTSD when that question came, but just a wee bit. We're kind of out of the woods on that one, where that's so long now. It's been a number of years, so not quite the same flashbacks that we used to have. Most of what I did in Salesforce was pretty good. I worked for an organization that had customized a lot of the Salesforce front end. It was not the Salesforce software as a service. It was the platform as a service side on Salesforce.com. And we built out our own evaluation trackers and kind of a techie side of it. It was great, actually. It wasn't triggering. It was more of we really were able to use it for pretty much everything for our SE organization. It was great. Because then you could link things together. You keep an inventory in there. You can link an inventory to an evaluation. That evaluation would be linked to a customer. That customer, we would keep status of what they were working on. So we could really track everything end to end. It was quite seamless, pretty nice. But that was the platform as a service functionality of Salesforce that allowed us to do that. But we had to have like a full-time set of developers just to do the things we needed to do in Salesforce. But once you get it set up, it's pretty remarkable. And then you can kind of tweak things, customize things. It was great. If you're planning this in this particular case, we're building it from the ground up. I went to work for a startup. I think I was employee number 95. Like this was very early on with this company. And we were kind of building our tools while we were building the company. And Salesforce allowed us to do that. So I used it a lot. I stayed there 7 years. You know, when I left, there were thousands of employees. It was a public company by then. You know, we really went from startup to high speed, full blown, and now multi-billion-dollar corporation. I left well before that. There were thousands of people working there when I left. So it was kind of interesting to get in at the very beginning and then kind of watch it grow. And we customized our tools around that. Really nice to have that. But I didn't have to get a cert on how to use the tools because it was all something we were building ourselves. There was no cert on how to use that particular tool because we made it. We built it from nothing, effectively. We built it from the platform that was already there on Salesforce, and it worked fantastic. It's a lot of fun. Kind of miss those days sometimes. If you ever get an opportunity in your career to kind of get in early with a startup and sort of ride it as it gets popular, it's really a fun, exciting thing to do. Highly recommend it. Ton of risk, just enormous amount of risk, but an enormous amount of reward on the other side of that. And always fun to be working with usually people who are in a startup, have some new technology nobody's seen yet. And from a technologist perspective, that was fun. It's fun to work with technology nobody's seen. In my case, it was technology nobody even believed existed, that there was no way this technology did this. And so I got to take the technology and put it under my arm and take it to customers and plug it into their network and say, you know, all that stuff I told you, and you said, no, there's no way it does that. Here it is doing that. You know, that's exciting. When you have that level of technology, you're well ahead of the curve, and you're now showing people something they've never seen before, something that eventually took the industry by storm in next generation firewalls. And I got to see the very beginning of next generation firewalls. I got to see the very first next generation firewall and show everybody how it worked. Plus, it's a lot of fun. If you've never taken any type of visibility tool or firewall and plugged it into a third-party network that you've never seen before, it is always a story. And I have hundreds of stories about what we saw. We would plug it in, we'd go to lunch, we would come back, hour has gone by, and it's amazing the stuff you can find on people's networks. And there were certain things we know we would always find on a network that was inappropriate, outside the scope of what was allowed on that network. In some cases, we would find things that were completely illegal. I don't mean like sort of illegal. I don't mean like you're driving 56 in a 55-mile zone. There have been cases where law enforcement had to be called. So that's sort of the line of security that you do get into when you work through those things. But always great to have a piece of technology nobody's seen before everybody is doubting, and then you plug it in and it just does somersaults. It's just amazing. And the things you could find were remarkable. If you ever have an opportunity to do that, please do that. It's a roller coaster ride. You have to have a good stomach for it. Your constitution really needs to be ready for this. Normally, once you've been in the industry for a while, you know that things change very quickly in technology, especially the business of technology. The companies get bought all the time. They get sold all the time. They get merged all the time. There are changes, and it happens constantly. You could walk in on a day, and now suddenly it's all different. That I was in the middle of the sort of the buying and selling world when we had the sort of the growth of the internet. And there were times when during an entire year, we would buy or sell tens of companies in the place that I was working. So you get sort of used to it over time that this could all change tomorrow. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing today. And if it changes tomorrow, I've got a plan. I've got a plan B. I've got a plan C. I got things I can do. You always need to have that. The people that had never been through that experience before were the ones that always had a problem when it happened. I expect it to happen. I expect to walk into work one day and there would be some craziness that would happen like that. So the craziness that I ran into with this one was just growth craze. Just imagine having a technology that nobody else has that is well above and beyond what the industry has ever seen before. Now you just sort of hang on because it just sort of pulled me along. I learned a lot because these were technologies I'd never worked with. Nobody had ever worked with these technologies before. So I learned a lot of something that was very emerging. I got a chance to kind of solidify some of the knowledge that I had gathered through the years. You know, you get a chance, you're doing a lot more IPsec VPNs. All right, well, let's get our IPsec game really strong. Doing more dynamic routing. Let's get our BGP game up to speed. Let's make sure our route redistribution process, we know solid. You know, the things that go well beyond what you would normally do. Not to mention you're working on a firewall. You need to understand routing. You need to understand switching. You need to understand network address translation. You need to understand firewalling. And then on top of that, the next generation part of that, the application piece of this. How do you integrate to Active Directory? How do you bring in a cloud-based malware detection? How do you have a new way to search for malware on people's systems? You know, all of this. So those are the things that really drive you as a technologist and make it so that you are constantly learning. This will be the watchword throughout your career, is you will constantly be trying to learn new things. That don't mean you're going home every night with a list of books, but there will be technologies and projects that come along where you do have to sit down with the book, you do have to sit down with the manuals and really understand as much as you can. You're going to be working with this technology from a practical perspective, and then you can kind of take a break. Then once you've learned that new thing, now you can plan to do the next new thing. Then you do the next new thing, and then you've leveled up. Now you go make more money somewhere else. That's sort of the circle of life in IT. Sometimes it takes a different path. Sometimes everybody's path is a little bit different. But I think that what it brings to you is the ability to make a decision on what you want to do with your life and what you want to do with your career. And for no other reason, that's why we do this. That's why we make these training courses. That's why we build the training materials. That's why we do the live streams, because I really feel IT, more than any other vertical market, more than any other line of work you could go into, this is the one that gives you the most amount of flexibility and options. And you just have to apply yourself, find the things you're interested and exciting about, learn as much as you can about those things, become the expert in that niche, and level up. Keep doing that. You're going to have no problem in this industry. You'll have no problem getting the salaries you'd like. You'll have no problem having the flexibility and do the things you want to do, whether it's staying at home, whether it's traveling, whether it's working with certain technologies. You get to decide. You don't really get to see that other places. You can't do that in medicine. You can't do that in transportation. You can't do that in manufacturing. IT is the place to be. So I don't know why everybody isn't doing this, but I'm glad they're not, because then there'd be no jobs for the rest of us. Right now, I think we're doing just fine. Well, that sort of brings us to the end of our Network Plus Q&A after show. I want to thank everybody for joining us in our first hour with the questions that we have. Thank you for the questions in the second hour. And thank you, Paul, for hammering down the idea of looking at some of those Microsoft certs. And indeed, I found that pretty interesting after going through all those pieces. Make sure you look through all of those too. I think you'll find something you might like. Thanks for being here for all of our Network Plus. Don't forget about our Network Plus course notes, our Success Bundle, and everything else on our website. If you are planning to get some certifications, make sure you check out our discounted vouchers if you're in the U.S. or Canada. Thank you so much for joining us. We love doing these, and we're so pleased that you're able to join us. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.